Hello guys, welcome to Ben 10 What Ifs. So in this video, we will see, what if Ben 10 found the Imperial Omnitrix and had the Harem of Attea, Looma, Rook Shar, Eunice&Xylene. If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. Chapter 1. The Imperial Awakening. The quantum distortion field shimmered across the Seattle skyline, casting an eerie violet glow against the midnight rain. Ben Tennyson tracked the anomaly from his vantage point atop the needle, water trickling down his face as he adjusted the calibration on his scanner. At 19, his features had hardened into something more defined, jawline sharper, eyes more focused, the boyish enthusiasm tempered by years of conflict and responsibility. 3 more fluctuations in the last hour, he muttered, tapping the communicator embedded in his jacket collar. Whatever's trying to punch through from that dimension isn't being subtle about it. Subtlety was never the Incarcene's strong suit, came Rook's voice, tinged with static from the atmospheric interference. The fleet movements along the Andromeda border suggest. This isn't Incarcene tech, Ben interrupted, zooming in on the energy signature. The wavelength is all wrong. This is something I've never seen before. The rain intensified, drumming against his shoulders as he stood, tucking the scanner into his pocket. The original Omnitrix gleamed dully on his wrist. Its familiar weight both comfort and burden. 5 years since Azimuth's latest upgrade, and still it felt like merely scratching the surface of possibilities. I'm going to need a closer look. His voice was calm, decisive. Hold position until I give the signal. Without waiting for Rook's protest, Ben triggered the Omnitrix, the flash of emerald light momentarily outshining the violet distortion. XLR aids of form materialized, kinetic energy surging through alien muscles as he launched himself from the tower, becoming a blue-black streak against the rain-slick buildings. The distortion grew more pronounced as he approached, crackling with arcs of energy that left scorched patterns across concrete and glass. Civilians had already been evacuated, a small mercy. Whatever was happening, at least innocent lives weren't in the immediate firing line. XLR-8 skidded to a halt at the epicenter, a public square now warped with spatial anomalies. The rain fell upward here, collecting in hovering pools before dissipating into steam. The air tasted metallic, charged with ozone and something else, something ancient. The Omnitrix suddenly pulsed, its familiar green shifting to a deep royal purple that matched the distortion field. Pain lanced up Ben's arm as XLR-8's form destabilized, forcing him back to human state. What the? He staggered, clutching his wrist as the Omnitrix continued to pulse, its surface heating against his skin. Rook, something's wrong with the Omnitrix. It's reacting to the distortion. Static was his only answer. A column of violet energy erupted from the center of the square, piercing the cloud cover and extending beyond sight. The ground trembled, concentric rings of force expanding outward, shattering windows and setting off car alarms in cascading waves of sound. At the column's base, reality folded in on itself, creating a doorway of sorts, a tear in the fabric of space-time. Through this impossible aperture stepped a figure Ben recognized instantly, despite having not seen him in over 2 years. Azimuth, Ben breathed, rain streaming down his face as he stared at the diminutive Galvan. What's happening? The first thinker looked different, older somehow. Despite the relatively short time that had passed, his eyes carried a weight Ben had never seen before, even during their darkest hours. Benjamin, Azimuth's voice carried despite its softness. I had hoped to have more time, but events have accelerated beyond my calculations. What events? What's happening to the Omnitrix? Ben demanded, wincing as enough. Our pulse of energy shot through the device. It's responding to its counterpart. Azimuth approached, his tiny form somehow commanding the chaotic space between them. The Imperial Omnitrix was never meant to cross dimensional boundaries. Its presence here is causing yours to resonate. Ben's expression hardened. Imperial Omnitrix, you never mentioned, because it wasn't supposed to exist in this reality. Azimuth's interruption was sharp, uncharacteristic urgency breaking through his usual measured tone. In another timeline, another universe, I created a far more powerful version of the Omnitrix. One without the limitations I built into yours. The sky darkened further, the storm intensifying as the dimensional tear widened. Through the aperture, Ben glimpsed impossible landscapes, alien architectures that defied comprehension. Someone has stolen it, Azimuth continued, and brought it to our reality. The convergence of two Omnitrixes from parallel dimensions is creating a cascading quantum instability. If not contained, it will eventually tear apart both universes. Ben's mind raced, processing implications at a speed that would have surprised his younger self. So we find this Imperial Omnitrix and send it back to its dimension. Simple enough. Azimuth's expression was grim. Nothing about this will be simple, Benjamin. The Imperial Omnitrix contains transformation data for over 1 million species. With no safeguards against misuse. In the wrong hands, it could. The dimensional tear suddenly pulsed, expanding violently. A shockwave of energy knocked Ben backward, sending him skidding across the wet pavement. The Omnitrix on his wrist sparked, its surface cracking as green energy bled out. No, Azimuth shouted, leaping toward Ben with surprising agility for his size. The destabilization is accelerating. Your Omnitrix is failing. Pain seared through Ben's arm as the familiar device, his constant companion for nearly a decade, began to disintegrate. Green light spilled from the fractures, mingling with the violet energy of the dimensional rift. Azimuth, what do I do? Ben gritted through clenched teeth, fighting to remain conscious as the pain intensified. There's only one possibility now. The Galvan placed his hands on the failing Omnitrix, fingers moving in precise patterns as he entered override commands. Your Omnitrix must be sacrificed to stabilize the dimensional breach. But you, Benjamin, have a greater role to play. With a final command sequence, Azimuth triggered a controlled meltdown. The Omnitrix released its stored energy in a focused beam. That struck the heart of the dimensional tear. For a moment, the violet light receded, the tear beginning to close. Ben stared at his bare wrist, an unfamiliar emptiness washing over him. After all these years, to be suddenly without the Omnitrix felt like losing a limb. It's not enough, Azimuth murmured, watching as the tear began to expand again despite their efforts. We need a new sound. T through the storm, the distinctive whine of Inkersine jumped ships descending through the cloud cover. 3 sleek vessels materialized, their weapons systems already charging. Perfect timing, as always, Ben muttered, instinctively reaching for the Omnitrix before remembering its absence. Vulnerability washed over him, quickly replaced by determination. He'd faced worse odds before, even without alien transformations. The lead ship's forward section opened, a boarding ramp extending. Down it walked a familiar figure, though like Ben himself, changed by the passing years. Princess Attea, now Empress of the Inkersine Empire, stood framed in the ship's entryway. Her military uniform was more elaborate than Ben remembered, decorated with medals and insignia of rank. She'd grown taller, her features sharper. But the confident smirk remained unchanged. Well, her voice carried across the square, somehow cutting through both the storm and the dimensional disturbance. Ben Tennyson without his precious watch. This day just keeps getting more interesting. Ben straightened, refusing to show weakness. Attea, still making dramatic entrances, I see. When you rule an empire, presentation matters. She descended the ramp, flanked by 4 elite guards, their weapons trained on Ben and Azimuth. Though I must say, I expected more resistance from the legendary hero of Earth. Azimuth stepped forward. Empress Attea, your presence here complicates an already dangerous situation. This dimensional breach threatens all realities, including your empire. Attea's expression shifted subtly, calculation replacing mockery. That's precisely why I'm here, Azimuth. Our long-range sensors detected the quantum disturbance 3 days ago, when we traced its potential epicenter to Earth, and more specifically to Tennyson. I decided personal intervention was warranted. Ben studied her, noting the subtle tells that suggested she wasn't being entirely forthcoming. Since when do Inkersines care about dimensional stability? Since it threatens our newly expanded territories in the Andromeda Galaxy. She approached until barely 10 feet separated them, seemingly unconcerned by the rain soaking through her uniform. Not all of us have the luxury of retirement, Tennyson. Some of us have empires to run. Before Ben could respond, the dimensional tear pulsed again, this time disgorgent. A small object that shot through the air like a meteor. It struck the ground between them, embedding itself in the concrete with enough force to create spiderweb fractures across the square. Steam rose from the impact crater, dissipating to reveal a metallic device unlike anything Ben had seen before. Similar in basic shape to his lost Omnitrix, this new device featured a more complex interface, with circuits of deep purple energy pulsing beneath the crystalline surface. The Imperial Omnitrix, Azimuth breathed, a rare expression of awe crossing his features. It found its way through. Attea's guards immediately trained their weapons on the device, but she held up a hand, stopping them. "Is that what I think it is? A version of the Omnitrix from another dimension," Ben explained, never taking his eyes off the device. "According to Azimuth, it's what's causing all this." The Imperial Omnitrix pulsed again, lifting from the crater as if alive. It hovered momentarily, scanning its surroundings with beams of purple light that swept across all present. "DNA signature recognized," came a voice from the device, similar to the Omnitrix's AI, but deeper, more resonant. Benjamin Kirby Tennyson identified as compatible wielder. Before anyone could react, the device shot forward, attaching itself to Ben's bare wrist with a metallic snap. Pain lanced through him once more, but different this time, not destructive, but transformative. Purple energy coursed up his arm, across his chest, enveloping his entire body. "What's happening to him?" Attea demanded, backing away as the energy intensified. Azimuth's expression was unreadable. "The Imperial Omnitrix is integrating with his genetic structure at a much deeper level than my design ever did. It's becoming part of him, not merely a tool." Ben couldn't speak, couldn't move as the energy rewrote him on a fundamental level. Knowledge flooded his consciousness. Countless alien species, technologies, languages, all downloading directly into his mind. He saw worlds he'd never visited, civilizations he'd never encountered, all through the lens of the Imperial Omnitrix's database. When the energy finally receded, Ben remained standing, though changed. The device on his wrist had streamlined, conforming perfectly to his arm as if it had always been there. More significantly, he felt different, sharper, more attuned to his surroundings. The dimensional tear, which had seemed chaotic before, now appeared as a complex mathematical equation that he could almost solve by instinct. "Ben," Azimuth approached cautiously, "are you all right?" Ben paused, surprised by the clarity of his thoughts. "I'm fine. Better than fine. It's like, everything makes more sense now." Attea studied him with new interest, her hand resting casually on her sidearm. "Well, that's not concerning at all." Ben looked down at the Imperial Omnitrix, understanding its interface instinctively despite its alien design. "This is how we close the breach." He turned to the dimensional tear, the solution unfolding in his mind. The Imperial Omnitrix can re-establish dimensional barriers by counteracting the quantum resonance frequency. Without hesitation, he activated the device. Instead of the familiar transformation sequence, the Imperial Omnitrix projected a field of energy that encapsulated the dimensional tear. The violet light contracted, folding in upon itself until, with a thunderclap of imploding air, the breach sealed. Rain began falling normally again as the storm dissipated, sunlight breaking through the clouds for the first time in days. The square was left damaged but intact, the crisis apparently averted. "Impressive," Attea commented, though her tone suggested caution rather than admiration. "But something tells me this isn't over." "It's not," Azimuth confirmed. "The Imperial Omnitrix may have sealed this breach, but its very presence in our dimension creates instability. And if it was stolen once, others will attempt to take it again." Ben flexed his wrist, feeling the device respond to his thoughts. "Let them try." Attea laughed, the sound sharp and not entirely humorous. "There's the Tennyson arrogance I remember. Some things never change. Some things do," Ben countered, meeting her gaze directly. "Why are you really here, Attea? The Incarsine Empire has never been known for its preventative peacekeeping." A shadow passed over Attea's features, quickly masked by her customary smirk. "Let's just say the dimensional disturbances affected some of our territories more severely than others. We've had visitors, hostile ones." Azimuth's expression turned grave. "From across the dimensional barrier." "What species?" "That's the problem. They don't match anything in our databases." Attea's voice took on a grudging professional quality that Ben hadn't heard before. "Shapeshifters of some kind, but different from any we've encountered. They can mimic not just appearance but energy signatures, technology. The implications settled heavily. Infiltrators, Ben concluded. How widespread? We've confirmed 3 colonies completely compromised before we detected the pattern. Attea's admission came reluctantly. We've quarantined those systems. But you can't be certain your own ranks haven't been infiltrated, Azimuth finished. The sudden whine of another ship's engines interrupted them. This vessel was markedly different from the sleek Inkersine craft, bulkier, bristling with weapons, its red hull bearing the insignia of the Tetraman Royal Fleet. And the day gets better, Attea muttered, her guards immediately shifting to defensive positions. The Tetraman ship hovered above the square, its landing thrusters kicking up debris as it descended. A boarding ramp extended, and down it strode a figure that caused Ben's eyebrows to rise in surprise. Princess Looma Redwind had grown into her royal title in the years since their last encounter. Standing nearly 8 feet tall, her fora RMS now adorned with ceremonial bracers denoting her status as War Princess of the Tetraman Empire. The traditional helmet she wore framed features that had matured from merely intimidating to regally commanding. Tennyson, she acknowledged, her voice carrying the formal cadence of Tetraman nobility. The dimensional breach has been sealed. Effective work. Looma, Ben nodded, noting how she evaluated the Imperial Omnitrix with professional interest. This is unexpected, is it? Looma descended the ramp fully, 6 royal guards falling into formation behind her. The Tetraman Council detected the quantum anomaly days ago. When our scientists confirmed Earth as the epicenter, I volunteered to lead the investigative force. Her gaze shifted to Attea, hardening noticeably. Though I see, the Inkersines have already attempted to claim jurisdiction. We arrived first, Attea shot back, her posture shifting subtly into something more combat-ready. And unlike some empires, we actually have experience with dimensional incursions. Experience failing to contain them, perhaps, Looma responded, her upper right hand resting casually on the hilt of a ceremonial blade. Ben stepped between them, the Imperial Omnitrix pulsing slightly in response to the rising tensions. Both of you, stand down. This isn't a territorial dispute, isn't it? Azimuth asked quietly. The Imperial Omnitrix represents power beyond anything currently possessed by any civilization in our galaxy. Its technology could shift the balance of power dramatically. The implication hung in the air, both royal figures reassessing the situation, and Ben, with newly calculating eyes. Which is precisely why it chose Ben Tennyson, Azimuth continued. Because despite his many flaws, he has consistently demonstrated that he doesn't seek power for its own sake. Ben felt the weight of both women's evaluating stares. Attea's expression was unreadable, while Looma's showed a complex mixture of respect and wariness. The Tetraman Council will want assurances, Looma finally said. If these dimensional incursions are spreading, as our intelligence suggests, then the device on your wrist may be the only effective countermeasure. The Inkersine Empire has already lost territory and citizens to whatever came through the breaches, Attea added, surprising Ben with what seemed like genuine concern beneath her usual bravado. Our scientists have failed to develop effective detection methods, let alone countermeasures. Ben looked down at the Imperial Omnitrix, feeling knowledge continuing to integrate into his consciousness. This device contains information about the invaders, he said slowly, accessing data he somehow knew was there. They're called the Morphoid Collective, dimensional parasites that consume realities by infiltrating and destabilizing their social structures. Azimuth stared at him. How could you possibly know that? The Imperial Omnitrix is showing me, Ben replied, struggling to articulate the experience. It's like I can access its database directly through thought. The Morphoids have destroyed countless dimensions before ours. Then we have a common enemy, Looma stated, her posture shifting from confrontational to something more aligned with military assessment. The question becomes, what do we do about it? Ben considered the 2 leaders before him, former adversaries now potentially allies. The Imperial Omnitrix pulsed again, and with it came a strategic clarity he'd never experienced before. We need a unified response, he stated, conviction building with each word. The Morphoids exploit division. They've targeted Inkersine territory first because your empire spans the most diverse systems. They're probably already infiltrating Tetraman space, too, Focus. Ing on border colonies where oversight is minimal. Both leaders exchanged glances, mutual concern momentarily overriding historical animosity. What exactly are you proposing, Tennyson? Attea asked, arms crossed but tone serious. A coalition, Ben replied without hesitation. Not just Inkersine and Tetraman forces, but representatives from all major galactic civilizations. The Morphoids can't be fought with conventional warfare. We need specialized detection methods, containment protocols, and coordinated response teams. The Tetraman Empire doesn't typically form alliances, Looma stated. Though her tone held consideration rather than outright rejection. Neither do we, Attea added. Especially not with hammer-handed rock people who think diplomacy means hitting something slightly less hard. Looma's 4 hands clenched into fists, but she maintained her composure. Rich words from a species whose ambassadors are indistinguishable from their assassins. Enough, Ben interrupted, his voice carrying new authority. This is exactly what the Morphoids want, exploiting existing tensions to prevent unified action. The Imperial Omnitrix projected a holographic display showing the known galaxy, with pulsing red points indicating confirmed dimensional breaches. There were dozens, spread across multiple sectors, with pattern projections suggesting hundreds more would appear within weeks. This isn't about your empires anymore, Ben continued. This is about preventing the complete collapse of our dimension. We need to establish a command center, pool resources, and develop response protocols immediately. Azimuth studied Ben with newfound respect. The Galvan will provide technical support, of course. Our dimensional laboratories are already analyzing the residual energy signatures. A moment of silence fell as both royal figures considered the situation. Years of imperial competition and cultural differences stood against the compelling logic of cooperation in the face of an existential threat. Looma was the first to respond. The Tetraman Council will need to be consulted formally. But as War Princess, I can commit our detection grid and border fleets to this coalition effort, provisionally. All eyes turned to Attea, whose expression had become unreadable. Finally, she gave a short, decisive nod. The Inkersine Empire will participate. We've already lost too much to these Morphoids to risk further incursions. A familiar smirk returned to her features. Besides, someone has to make sure this coalition actually functions effectively instead of drowning in bureaucratic procedure. Charming as always, Looma commented dryly. Ben felt a strange sense of déjà vu, standing between these two powerful women, both now leaders of their people, both with complicated personal histories with him. And both now looking to him for leadership in this crisis. We need a neutral location for coalition headquarters, he said, mind already racing ahead. Somewhere WITH existing infrastructure for multi-species habitation and diplomatic protocols. The Plumber headquarters in the Triangulum sector would be suitable, Azimuth suggested. It's already designed for C-Ross species cooperation and has extensive research facilities. Ben nodded. We should depart immediately. The longer we wait, the more footholds the Morphoids establish. My ship is faster, Attea stated, glancing pointedly at Looma's bulkier vessel. My ship has better defensive capabilities, Looma countered. Given that we're potentially traveling through compromised space, that seems the wiser choice. Ben surprised himself with a burst of laughter, drawing startled looks from both women. Some things really don't change. We'll take both ships, establishing communication protocols between Inkersine and Tetraman vessels will be our first test of coalition viability anyway. The Imperial Omnitrix pulsed again, this time projecting a more complex hologram, a 3-dimensional model of what appeared to be a space station. What's this? Azimuth asked, studying the projection with professional interest. The Coalition Nexus, Ben replied, the name coming to him as naturally as the design itself. A purpose-built command center incorporating technologies from multiple civilizations. The Imperial Omnitrix contains architectural and engineering specifications that can be adapted to our needs. Looma studied the projection with a strategic eye. Impressive. The defense grid incorporates elements of Tetraman Fortress design, but with significant improvements. And the propulsion system has Inkersine jump drive components, Attea noted, failing to completely hide her approval. Though I see you've corrected the phase alignment issue our engineers have been struggling with. Ben deactivated the projection. That's for later. Right now, We focus on establishing the coalition framework and developing immediate countermeasures. A small smile tugged at Azmuth's mouth. It seems the Imperial Omnitrix chose well. Perhaps better than I had anticipated. The sudden screech of tearing metal interrupted them. A section of the ground buckled upward, concrete shattering as something forced its way through from below. Ben instinctively moved into a defensive stance as both Attea's and Looma's guards formed protective perimeters around their leaders. From the ruptured ground emerged a creature unlike anything Ben had seen before. Humanoid in basic shape, its form shifted constantly between states of matter, solid to liquid to gaseous and back again. Its features were indistinct, except for 6 glowing points that might have been eyes, arranged in a hexagonal pattern. Morphoid, Ben identified immediately, knowledge from the Imperial Omnitrix flowing through his consciousness. Advanced scout, probably been here since before we closed the breach. Dimensional barriers restored, the creature spoke, its voice a discordant overlay of multiple tones. Primary transit point compromised, adapting strategy accordingly. Without warning, it launched itself toward Ben, its form elongating into a spear-like projectile. Ben activated the Imperial Omnitrix instinctively, but, instead of the familiar transformation sequence, something entirely new happened. Energy flowed from the device, enveloping Ben in a cocoon of purple light. When it dissipated, he remained human in appearance, but with his body now overlaid with a semi-translucent exoskeleton of energy. The Imperial Omnitrix had integrated its power directly into his human form rather than transforming him entirely. The Morphoid struck this energy shield and recoiled, parts of its substance burning away on contact. It retreated, reassessing its target with what seemed like surprise. Imperial technology detected, it chittered. Countermeasures insufficient. Strategic withdrawal recommended. Ben raised his hand, now encased in the energy exoskeleton, and found he could shape the power at will. He formed T into a containment field that shot forward, encapsulating the Morphoid before it could escape. I don't think so, Ben stated, tightening the field around the struggling creature. You're going to tell us exactly how many of your kind are already here, and what your primary objectives are. The Morphoid's form destabilized further inside the containment field, its 6 eyes blinking in sequence. The collective cannot be stopped. This dimension will be harvested like all others before it. Bold words for a creature currently trapped in my containment field, Ben replied, maintaining the energy construct with surprising ease. The Imperial Omnitrix seemed to anticipate his needs, adjusting power levels automatically. Attea stepped forward, her military training evident in how she assessed the captured entity. We should transfer it to a more permanent containment facility for interrogation. Agreed, Looma said. My ship has isolation chambers designed for shapeshifting species. The Morphoid suddenly contracted, its entire form compressing into a dense sphere before detonating with unexpected force. The explosion would have been catastrophic had Ben not instinctively reinforced the containment field, channeling the blast energy upward into the empty sky. When the light faded, nothing remained of the Morphoid, not even residual matter. Self-destruct capability, Ben noted grimly. That complicates capture and interrogation efforts, but confirms they have a hierarchical command structure, Looma observed. Scouts willing to sacrifice themselves to protect information typically indicate centralized leadership. Which means cutting off the head could disable the entire operation, Attea added, her military mind clearly following the same strategic path. Ben deactivated the energy exoskeleton, returning to normal human appearance with the Imperial Omnitrix still firmly attached to his wrist. We need to move quickly. That scout was likely reporting back to others. How they know about the Imperial Omnitrix, they'll accelerate their timeline. My ship is ready for immediate departure, Looma stated. We can reach the Triangulum sector within 3 Earth days. 2.5 on my vessel, Attea countered, before adding with surprising pragmatism, but Looma's point about defensive capabilities is valid. Perhaps a joint convoy formation would be most efficient. Ben nodded, struck by how quickly former enemies could align when faced with a greater threat. Azmuth, will you join us? Your expertise will be invaluable. The Galvan considered for a moment. I will follow separately. There are resources at my laboratory that may prove useful, particularly regarding dimensional stability mechanics. The sound of approaching vehicles interrupted them. Earth A. You authorities finally arriving at the scene of the disturbance. Ben glanced toward the flashing lights, then back to the galactic leaders before him. I need 10 minutes to leave instructions for my team here, he said. Then we depart. The next hour passed in a blur of activity. Ben contacted Rook and Gwen, briefing them on the situation and delegating Earth's defense coordination to them. The Imperial Omnitrix provided him with detection protocols that could be adapted to existing plumber technology, allowing for early identification of morphoid infiltrators. As Ben prepared to board Looma's ship, he found himself standing between two women who had once been adversaries, to him and to each other, now united by common purpose. The dynamic felt strange yet somehow fitting. This coalition will only function if historical rivalries are set aside, he said, looking between them. Can I count on both of you to lead by example? Looma straightened to her full impressive height. The Tetraman honor code is clear. When facing extinction, old conflicts become irrelevant. I will uphold my end of this alliance. Attea's response came with her characteristic smirk, though Ben detected a new seriousness beneath it. The Incursine Empire adapts to survive. Always has. Besides, working with you both might actually be interesting. Interesting, Ben repeated, unable to suppress a smile. That's one word for it. As they boarded their respective ships, Ben felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders, not just for Earth now, but for countless civilizations across the galaxy. Yet alongside that weight came a strange sense of clarity, as if pieces of his life were finally falling into a pattern that made sense. The Imperial Omnitrix pulsed softly against his wrist, a constant reminder of both the threat they faced and the unprecedented power now at his disposal. He glanced down at it, still adjusting to its presence where the familiar green of his original Omnitrix had been for so long. I hope you know what you're doing, he murmured to the device, choosing me for this. The ships lifted off, rising through Earth's atmosphere toward the stars beyond. As the blue of his home planet receded, Ben stood at the viewport, watching the Incursine vessel take formation alongside them. Behind him, Looma issued commands to her crew in the formal cadence of Tetraman military protocol. Whatever came next, Ben knew with absolute certainty that nothing would ever be the same again. The Imperial Omnitrix had changed everything, not just by its power, but by forcing unlikely alliances that might never have formed otherwise. And as they accelerated into hyperspace, stars streaking into lines of light around them, Ben allowed himself a moment of quiet anticipation. The galaxy was changing, he was changing, and somehow, standing between an Incursine Empress and a Tetraman War Princess, it felt like exactly where he was meant to be. Chapter 2. Shadows Between Stars. The Coalition Nexus took shape with remarkable speed. What had been an empty sector of space between the Triangulum and Andromeda galaxies now hosted an unprecedented collaborative effort, construction. Vessels from a dozen civilizations working in orchestrated harmony to build something the universe had never seen before. Ben observed from the command deck of the partially completed central hub, The Imperial Omnitrix occasionally pulsing as if approving of the progress. 3 weeks had passed since the confrontation on Earth. 3 weeks of diplomatic negotiations, technical integrations, and first tentative steps toward a unified response to the morphoid threat. Tetraman construction crews are completing the outer defense ring ahead of schedule, Looma reported, joining him at the viewport. She'd traded her ceremonial armor for more practical military attire, though the royal insignia remained prominently displayed on her shoulder guards. Say what you will about my people, but we understand structural integrity. The design modifications you suggested for the shield generators were inspired, Ben acknowledged, noting how she stood slightly closer to him than strictly necessary for conversation. The Imperial Omnitrix provided the base schematics, but your engineers improved the implementation significantly. A flash of pride crossed Looma's features. Tetraman engineering is often underestimated. We're known for our strength, not our minds, a misconception my generation is working to correct. A misconception I'm guilty of perpetuating in the past, Ben admitted. Imperial Omnitrix had changed him in subtle ways, making him more reflective, more willing to acknowledge past errors. I didn't always see beyond cultural stereotypes. Few do, Looma replied, her lower arms clasped formally behind her back while her upper right hand gestured toward the construction. Even among my own people, tradition often blinds us to innovation. It took significant persuasion to convince the council that this coalition serves Tetraman interests. Ben studied her profile, struck by how she'd evolved from the impetuous warrior princess he'd once known into a thoughtful military strategist. And does it serve Tetraman interests? A complex expression crossed her features. The Morphoid threat transcends individual empire concerns. But beyond that, she paused, choosing her words carefully. This coalition represents something I've long believed necessary, a forum where strength and diplomacy coexist as equal virtues. The conversation was interrupted by the distinctive sound of Inkersine military boots on the metal flooring. Attea approached, surrounded by a cloud of holographic displays showing various construction metrics and security protocols. The sensor grid is online but underperforming by 12%, she announced without preamble, dismissing the displays with a flick of her wrist. My engineers are blaming integration issues with the Galvan components. Ben nodded, having anticipated this particular challenge. The dimensional detection algorithms require processing architecture that doesn't easily integrate with standard systems. I see. And help recalibrate the interface parameters. Attea raised an eyebrow, still adjusting to Ben's enhanced technical knowledge. Since when do you understand quantum processing architecture? Since this, Ben replied, gesturing to the Imperial Omnitrix. It's not just providing information, it's changing how I process it. Connections I wouldn't have seen before are now obvious. Convenient, Attea remarked, though without her usual sarcasm. Speaking of connections, we've received confirmation that the plumbers are sending a special investigative team. Arrival expected within the hour. Good, Ben said, a sense of anticipation rising at the thought of familiar allies joining their effort. We need their expertise in cross-jurisdictional investigations. Plumbers, Looma pronounced the word with measured neutrality. Their operational protocols are impressive, though their authority structure lacks the clarity of military hierarchy. That flexibility is their strength, Ben countered. Especially when dealing with a shapeshifting enemy that exploits rigid command structures. A subtle alert chimed from the Imperial Omnitrix, drawing Ben's attention to an incoming transmission. With a thought, he projected the message into a holographic display visible to all three of them. The blue-tinged image of Magister Patellidae appeared, his fish-like features set in an expression of concern. Tennyson, we've got a situation. The investigative team encountered a dimensional anomaly en route to your position. Their ship managed to send a distress signal before communications were lost. Ben felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. Location. Coordinates transmitted to your systems, Patellidae replied. Approximately 3 light-years from your position, near the Vicarian Nebula. Any indication of Morphoid involvement? Looma asked, instantly shifting into tactical assessment mode. The distress signal included a partial sensor reading consistent with previous Morphoid encounters, Patellidae confirmed. But there was something else, an energy signature we haven't seen before. Ben exchanged glances with Attea and Looma. We'll investigate immediately. Send all data to the Coalition Nexus and continue monitoring for any additional signals. As Patellidae's image faded, Attea was already moving toward the command console. I'll prepare my personal scout vessel. It's faster than anything else currently docked and has enhanced stealth capabilities. I'll accompany you, Looma stated, her tone making it clear this wasn't a request. Ben considered the dynamics at play, 2 rival leaders, both insisting on personally investigating a potentially dangerous situation. The old Ben might have argued against their involvement, but the Imperial Omnitrix had given him a deeper understanding of their motivations. We'll take Attea's ship, he decided. But we go as a small team, the 3 of us plus 2 specialists I select. Speed and stealth will be more valuable than firepower for a rescue operation. Both women nodded their agreement, though Ben didn't miss the subtle look of satisfaction Attea directed at Looma when her ship was selected. Some rivalries would take more than a common enemy to fully dissolve. The Vicarian Nebula sprawled across the viewscreen in swirls of cosmic dust and newborn stars, its beauty belying the potential danger that waited within its clouds. Attea's scout vessel, sleek, dark, and running with minimal energy signatures, approached the last known coordinates of the plumber ship. No debris field, Ben observed, standing between Attea at the pilot controls and Looma at the tactical station. That's promising. are concerning, countered a new voice from the sensor array. Absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence. Rook Shar, sister to Ben's longtime partner Rook Blanco, had joined their mission as one of Ben's selected specialists. Her feline features were set in concentration as she calibrated the ship's sensors to penetrate the nebula's interference. The distinctive plumber armor she wore had been modified with additional sensor equipment specifically designed to detect dimensional anomalies. The nebula's radiation is interfering with long-range scans, she continued, her speech patterns more formal than her brother's but with the same occasional idiom confusion. Like finding a needle in a rainstorm. Haystack, Ben corrected automatically. And you're right, we need to get closer. Closer could mean compromised, came another female voice, this one from the ship's environmental station. Eunice, the Omnitrix avatar who had once been created from Azimuth's DNA synthesis technology, monitored atmospheric and environmental conditions with the unique perspective of someone who was both technological construct and biological entity. Her appearance remained youthfully human, though the green circuitry patterns that occasionally shimmered beneath her skin revealed her true nature. Years of independent existence had given her a distinctive personality, analytical yet deeply empathetic, with an understanding of life that transcended conventional boundaries. The dimensional variance readings are NCR. Easing exponentially as we approach the coordinates, Eunice continued, her hands moving deftly across the holographic interface. Whatever caused the distress signal is still active. Attea guided the ship deeper into the nebula, her piloting skills evident in how she navigated the swirling cosmic gases. Energy signature at bearing 223 MARK-47, she reported. Definitely artificial, not consistent with natural nebula phenomena. That's them, Ben confirmed, the Imperial Omnitrix pulsing in apparent agreement. Take us in, but maintain distance until we can confirm the situation. As they approached, the silhouette of a plumber vessel gradually became visible through the nebula's haze, intact but clearly disabled, drifting without power among the cosmic clouds. No life signs, Rook Shar reported, her voice carefully controlled, but significant interference could be masking biosignatures. I'm detecting an unusual energy field surrounding the ship, Eunice added. It's similar to the dimensional distortion we encountered on Earth, but more structured. Almost as if it's been deliberately shaped. Ben studied the vessel through the viewscreen, the Imperial Omnitrix feeding him analysis data directly into his consciousness. They're trapped in a dimensional pocket, not fully in our reality, but not completely phased into another either. A trap, Looma concluded, her 4 hectares. NDS moving efficiently across the tactical station. Designed to capture anyone who investigated the initial distress signal. Can we break them out? Attea asked, positioning their ship at a safe distance while maintaining visual contact. Ben focused on the information flowing from the Imperial Omnitrix, sorting through possibilities with newfound clarity. Yes, but not from here. I need to get closer. Establish direct contact with the dimensional field. That's exactly what whoever set this trap wants, Rook Shar pointed out, her tactical training evident in her caution. Sometimes the only way to disarm a trap is to trigger it deliberately, Ben replied, a plan taking shape in his mind. But on our terms, not theirs. He turned to Eunice. The Omnitrix technology that comprises your Rix. It has dimensional stabilization properties, doesn't it? Eunice's eyes widened slightly in understanding. Yes, my core matrix exists partially outside conventional spacetime, it's how I maintain form stability despite my adaptive capabilities. And Rook Shar, Ben continued, your modified scanner can detect dimensional fluctuations in real time. She nodded. It's calibrated to identify the specific wavelength pattern associated with morphoid technology. Good. Here's the plan, Ben outlined, gesturing to create a tactical hologram between them. Attea will position the ship at the edge of the dimensional field. Eunice and I will use a targeted shuttle to approach the plumber vessel directly. The combination of her dimensional stability matrix and the Imperial Omnitrix should create a corridor of normal spacetime through the distortion. And if it doesn't? Looma asked, her expression conveying professional concern rather than doubt. Then Rook Shar will use the modified scanner to track our dimensional coordinates. And you and Attea will have exactly 12 minutes to extract us before the pocket collapses completely. Attea's expression shifted between concern and grudging admiration. Risky. I like it. I don't, Looma stated flatly. The tactical disadvantage of sending our two most valuable assets directly into an enemy trap is significant. Which is why it will work, Ben countered. The Morphoids expect us to approach cautiously, to probe the field from a distance. A direct insertion will surprise them, giving us the initiative. The plan moved quickly from concept to execution. Within 20 minutes, Ben and Eunice were aboard a small shuttle, detached from the main ship and approaching the dimensional distortion surrounding the plumber vessel. Nervous? Ben asked, noticing Eunice's focused expression as she monitored the shuttle's systems. Curious, she corrected, offering a small smile. My entire existence is a study in dimensional stability. This is the first time that quirk of my design has practical application in a crisis. As they approached the boundary of the distortion field, the shuttle's sensors began to emit warning signals. The space ahead seemed to shimmer, reality itself becoming less certain. Activating the Imperial Omnitrix now, Ben announced, both to Eunice and to the team monitoring from the main ship. The device responded instantly, purple energy flowing from it to encase both Ben and Eunice in a protective field. Simultaneously, Eunice's skin shimmered with green circuitry patterns as she activated her core matrix. Dimensional stabilization field engaged, harmonizing with the Imperial Omnitrix frequency. The shuttle penetrated the boundary, momentarily shuddering as competing realities tried to claim it. Then, with a flash of combined purple and green energy, they pushed through, finding themselves in what appeared to be the same section of nebula, but subtly altered. Colors were slightly shifted, stars positioned differently, and the disabled plumber ship now clearly visible just ahead. We're inside the pocket dimension, Eunice confirmed, checking her instruments. Fascinating. It's a complete micro-reality, with its own physical laws slightly variant from our own. Can you detect any life signs aboard the plumber vessel now? Ben asked, guiding their shuttle toward the larger ship. Eunice focused on the sensor readings. Yes, 5 biosignatures, all showing signs of temporal displacement. They're alive but experiencing time at a different rate than we are. Trapped in temporal flux, Ben murmured. Understanding flowing from the Imperial Omnitrix. Classic Morphoid tactic. They study their prey by manipulating their temporal perception. The shuttle docked with the plumber vessel WI-TH, a metallic clang that seemed unnaturally loud in the pocket dimension's altered acoustics. Ben and Eunice moved quickly to the airlock, the combined energy fields of the Imperial Omnitrix and X matrix creating a bubble of stable reality around them. Something doesn't feel right, Eunice whispered as the airlock cycled. The temporal distortion patterns are inconsistent with what we know of Morphoid technology. Agreed, Ben said, the Imperial Omnitrix pulsing with what felt like warning. Stay alert. This may not be what we expected. The airlock opened to reveal the main corridor of the plumber ship. Bathed in emergency lighting that pulsed at an unnaturally slow rate. Moving cautiously forward, they found the first crew member, a male Petrosapian plumber frozen in mid-motion, reaching for a weapon that hung suspended in the air where he had dropped it. He's experiencing time at approximately 1/10,000th R rate, Eunice analyzed, careful not to touch the frozen figure. He's not aware of our presence. They proceeded through the ship, finding each crew member similarly frozen in various defensive postures, all clearly responding to some threat, but none showing signs of actual combat engagement. They were expecting something, but weren't actually attacked, Ben observed as they reached the bridge. This was a precision temporal trap, not an assault. The It revealed the final crew member, a female Kinesolaran commander suspended in the captain's chair, her expression one of startled recognition rather than fear. Commander Rushlight, Ben identified her. One of the plumber's best investigators. If she was assigned to this mission, then the plumbers consider the Morphoid threat their highest priority, Eunice finished. Can we free them from the temporal stasis? Ben studied the situation, the Imperial Omnitrix feeding him complex calculations regarding temporal mechanics. Yes, but not here. We need to collapse the pocket dimension first, return the ship to normal space. Otherwise, the temporal reintegration could be fatal. A soft chime from Eunice's wrist communicator interrupted them. Rook Shar is signaling. We have 8 minutes before the pocket becomes unstable. Ben moved to the ship's main console, the Imperial Omnitrix interfacing directly with the systems. I can reverse the dimensional folding if I can locate the orig. In point. The device generating the pocket. Bridge sensors aren't detecting any unusual devices, Eunice reported, scanning the systems. Whatever created this pocket might not be physically present. Ben's expression tightened in concentration as he processed information from the Imperial Omnitrix. No, it's here. The pocket had to be created from within, a dimensional seed of some kind. His eyes widened in sudden realization. It's one of them. One of the crew is a morphoid infiltrator. Eunice immediately began scanning each frozen crew member with her Omnitrix sensors. That's impossible. I am reading standard biosignatures for each species represented. Because we're looking for the wrong thing, Ben realized, the Imperial Omnitrix pulsing more urgently now. The morphoids don't just imitate appearance. They replicate at the quantum level. We need to check for dimensional resonance patterns. Working quickly, they re-examined each crew member using a combination of the Imperial Omnitrix's advanced scanning capabilities and Eunice's unique sensory perspective. When they reached Commander Rushlight, both detected the anomaly simultaneously. There, Eunice whispered, her sensors detecting a subtle resonance pattern emanating from what appeared to be the commander's badge. The insignia, its phase shifted just slightly out of alignment with the rest of her uniform. The dimensional seed, Ben confirmed. Disguised as a standard plumber badge but actually generating the entire pocket dimension from within. With careful precision, Ben used the Imperial Omnitrix to generate a containment field around the badge. Once I remove it, the pocket will begin to collapse immediately. We'll have less than 2 minutes to get back to our shuttle and clear the dimensional boundary. Ready when you are, Eunice confirmed, already calculating the shortest route back to the airlock. With a precisely controlled energy beam from the Imperial Omnitrix, Ben extracted the disguised device from the frozen commander's uniform. Immediately, a high-pitched whine filled the air as reality itself began to protest the imminent collapse of the artificial dimension. Run, Ben ordered Eunice&Xylene as both were already sprinting toward the airlock. The ship around them began to shimmer, solid surfaces becoming momentarily translucent as the pocket dimension struggled to maintain coherence. They reached the airlock just as gravity began to fluctuate, forcing them to virtually swim through suddenly resistant air back to their shuttle. Detach immediately, Ben commanded as they sealed the shuttle's hatch behind them. Eunice slammed her hand on the emergency release, separating their small craft from the larger vessel with a violent jolt. The shuttle's engines engaged automatically, propelling them toward the increasingly visible boundary of the pocket dimension. Dimensional collapse accelerating, Eunice reported, her voice steady despite the chaos surrounding them. Boundary, integrity at 23% and falling. Attea, Looma, we need extraction coordinates now, Ben transmitted to the waiting ship outside the pocket. Through increasingly static-filled communications, Attea's voice responded, tracking your signature. Boundary weakest at coordinates 115 mark 32. Adjusting position to receive you. Ben piloted the shuttle toward the specified coordinates, the small craft bucking wildly as dimensional forces threatened to tear it apart. The Imperial Omnitrix's protective field strained to maintain integrity around them. Boundary in visual range, Eunice&Xylene announced as a shimmering wall of distorted space appeared ahead of them. But it's closing rapidly. Hold on, Ben urged, pushing the shuttle's engines beyond safety parameters. The craft shuddered violently as they approached the boundary at dangerous speed. The moment of transition was both instantaneous and eternal, a stretching of perception as they crashed through the weakening dimensional wall back into normal space. The shuttle tumbled uncontrollably, systems overloading from the dimensional stress. Stabilizers offline, Eunice reported calmly, despite being thrown against her restraints. Hull integrity compromised in 3 sections. Through the viewscreen, Ben could see Attea's scout vessel moving rapidly toward them, tractor beam already engaged. Just hold together a little longer, he urged the failing shuttle. The tractor beam caught them moments before complete system failure, drawing the damaged shuttle into the scout ship's small hangar bay. As atmosphere repressurized around them, Ben and Eunice emerged to find Attea, Looma, and Rook Shar waiting with expressions ranging from relief to carefully controlled concern. The plumber vessel, Rook Shar asked immediately, returning to normal space now. Ben confirmed, holding up the dimensional seed device securely contained within an Imperial Omnitrix energy field. Once fully reintegrated, the crew should return to normal temporal alignment. And that is? Looma inquired, eyeing the small device with professional suspicion. Morphoid technology, but unlike anything we've encountered so far, Eunice explained. It generated the entire pocket dimension from within, using the ship's own power systems as an amplifier. Attea stepped closer, studying the device with narrowed eyes. So they're not just infiltrating through breaches, they're creating their own dimensional pockets wherever they go. Which makes them significantly more dangerous than we estimated, Looma concluded. If they can establish say temporal traps throughout strategic locations, they could effectively remove key personnel from the equation without raising immediate alarms, Rook Shar finished. A perfect infiltration strategy. The ship's sensors chimed, drawing their attention to the viewscreen where the plumber vessel had now fully materialized in normal space, its systems gradually reactivating as temporal alignment restored. "We're receiving a transmission," Attea announced, activating the communication array. Commander Rushlight's image appeared, her kinesiolaran features showing disorientation but rapidly focusing. "Coalition vessel. This is Commander Rushlight of the Plumber Special Investigations Division. Status report. My crew and I have experienced approximately 3 seconds of subjective time since encountering the anomaly." "Commander, this is Ben Tennyson," Ben responded. "Your ship was trapped in a dimensional pocket for nearly 27 hours. We've extracted you and contained the device responsible." Recognition flashed across the commander's features. "Tennyson, I was specifically en route to brief you on our findings." Her expression became more serious. "We've discovered something concerning the Morphoid infiltration. Something that changes everything we thought we knew about their objectives. We'll dock with your vessel and bring you aboard," Ben decided. "This information needs to be shared with the full coalition leadership immediately." As Attea maneuvered their ship to rendezvous with the plumber vessel, Ben found himself studying the contained dimensional seed with growing concern. The Imperial Omnitrix was providing analysis that suggested capabilities beyond what they'd witnessed, capabilities that hinted at a far more sophisticated enemy than they had prepared for. The Coalition Nexus Command Center hummed with tense activity as Commander Rushlight presented her findings to the assembled leadership. Holographic displays showed data streams, infiltration patterns, and predictive models that painted an increasingly alarming picture. "Based on our investigation of affected worlds, we've determined that the Morphoids aren't simply invading our dimension," the commander explained. Her naturally rapid speech carefully modulated for clarity. "They're transforming it, converting our spacetime into something compatible with their native dimensional properties. Terraforming on a cosmic scale," Ben murmured, the Imperial Omnitrix pulsing in apparent confirmation. "Exactly," Rushlight agreed. "Each dimensional pocket serves as a conversion node, gradual. Why altering the fundamental constants of our universe to match theirs?" Attea leaned forward, her military mind quickly grasping the implications. "So the more nodes they establish, the faster the conversion process. And the harder it becomes to detect and counter their efforts," Looma added, her forearms crossed in a posture that Ben had come to recognize as her strategic assessment stance. Rook Shar manipulated the holographic display to show a galactic map with highlighted sectors. "Based on detected anomalies, we estimate approximately 37 active conversion nodes across 12 systems. Primarily concentrated in less populated regions where detection would be delayed. A classic infiltration strategy," Looma noted. "Establish footholds in peripheral territories before striking at core worlds." Eunice, who had been analyzing the contained dimensional seed since their return, joined the discussion. "The technology is incredibly sophisticated, beyond anything we've seen from the Morphoids previously. It suggests either significant technological evolution or they've acquired new technology from another source," Ben completed the thought, voicing the concern that had been growing since their mission. "Possibly from other dimensions they've already conquered." An uncomfortable silence settled over the command center as the full implications became clear. They weren't just facing an invasion. They were facing an enemy that grew more powerful with each successful conquest, accumulating knowledge and technology across multiple dimensions. Commander Rushlight continued, bringing up new data on the display. "There's something else. We've identified a pattern in their node placements." The holographic map zoomed out, showing the nodes as points of light. When connected, they formed a distinctive geometric pattern. They're creating a dimensional lattice, each node strengthening the others through quantum entanglement. Like a crystal structure, Eunice observed. Distributed processing on a cosmic scale. Ben studied the pattern, the Imperial Omnitrix feeding him insights that connected disparate pieces of information. They're building towards something specific, a culmination point where the dimensional conversion reaches critical mass. Can we identify this culmination point? Attea asked, already thinking in terms of preemptive strikes. Theoretically, Rook Shar replied, manipulating the projection to show predictive models. If the pattern continues, the convergence would occur here. She highlighted a point in space that caused several of those present to exchange concerned glances. The Anor system, Looma identified. Specifically, the space between Anor Phatos and Anor Transil, a region already known for naturally occurring dimensional instabilities, Eunice noted. The perfect location to trigger a large-scale conversion event. Ben's decision came quickly, the Imperial Omnitrix seeming to reinforce his strategic assessment. We need to establish a counteroffensive immediately. 3 objectives. First, contain and neutralize existing conversion nodes. Second, establish a defensive perimeter around the Anor system. Third, develop technology to detect morphoid infiltrators before they can establish new nodes. The Inkerseen fleet can begin neutralizing identified nodes immediately, Attea offered without hesitation. Our ships are already positioned near 7 of the confirmed locations. Tetraman forces will secure the Anor system, Looma stated. Our defensive capabilities are best suited for establishing the perimeter you describe. The plumbers will coordinate with both forces and handle detection protocol distribution, Commander Rushlight added. My team has already developed preliminary identification methods based on quantum resonance scanning. Ben nodded, feeling a sense of cautious optimism at how quickly the coalition was responding to this evolving threat. Eunice, Rook Shar, I want you to establish a research team focused specifically on the dimensional seed technology. If we can understand how it works, we might be able to reverse its effects or even adapt it for our own defensive measures. Both women nodded their acceptance of the assignment, already exchanging ideas about research methodologies. This coalition is proving more effective than I anticipated, Looma commented quietly to Ben as the others began organizing their respective tasks. Though I suspect much of that effectiveness stems from your leadership. Not leadership, Ben corrected. Facilitation. Everyone Air brings critical expertise and resources. I'm just helping to align those toward common goals. An important distinction, came a new voice from the command center entrance. And one that reveals significant personal growth, Benjamin. All heads turned to see Azimuth entering, accompanied by another figure that caused Ben to straighten in surprise. Xylene, he identified the Uxorite magistrate, who had once been Azimuth's colleague, and who had been responsible for sending the original Omnitrix to Earth years ago. I didn't expect to see you involved in this. The slender, green-skinned alien regarded Ben with her characteristic combination of analytical detachment and subtle warmth. When Azimuth informed me of the dimensional incursions, and of your new role as wielder of the Imperial Omnitrix, I felt my expertise might be of value. Xylene's understanding of dimensional mechanics exceeds even my own in certain aspects, Azimuth explained, taking position near the holographic display. Particularly regarding the Anor system's unique properties. I spent 17 years studying the dimensional boundaries near Anor Phatos, Xylene elaborated, moving with graceful precision to manipulate the display. The region exists at what we call a dimensional fault line, a place where the barriers between realities are naturally thinner. Ben hadn't seen Xylene in years, but was immediately struck by how she seemed virtually unchanged, her ageless features and graceful movements a testament to the Uxorite's legendary longevity. Her eyes, however, held a new intensity when they met his. The Imperial Omnitrix has chosen well, she commented, studying Ben with an evaluating gaze. You've matured considerably since our last encounter. Necessity has a way of accelerating growth, Ben replied, feeling an unexpected warmth at her approval. Indeed, she turned her attention to the dimensional seed contained in the center of the command table. This device confirms my suspicions about the morphoid methodology. They're not merely creating bridgeheads, they're establishing resonance points that gradually harmonize our dimensional frequency with theirs. Can it be reversed? Looma asked. Practical as always. Theoretically, Xylene replied, but doing so requires understanding dimensional harmonics at a fundamental level. Few beings in our universe possess such knowledge. But you do, Ben stated, recognizing the implication in her presence. A subtle smile touched Xylene's features. I have insights, which I believe, combined with the Imperial Omnitrix's capabilities and proper research support, could lead to effective countermeasures. The conversation was interrupted by an alert from the command center's communication array. Attea moved to answer it, her expression shifting to one of controlled alarm as she received the transmission. The Inkerseen research outpost in the Mackler sector has gone dark, she reported. Last transmission indicated dimensional disto. RTIONS consistent with a conversion node activation. Mackler is less than a light year from our position, Rook Shar noted with concern. If they've established a node that close to the coalition nexus, they know about us, Ben concluded, and they're making a statement. Or testing our defenses, Looma suggested, already moving to the tactical station. Determining our response capabilities. Then let's show them exactly what those capabilities are, Ben decided. Attea, prepare your fastest response vessel. Looma, I need a tactical strike team. Xylene, your dimensional expertise will be crucial. We move immediately to contain this node before it fully activates. And the Nexus? Eunice asked. If this is a diversion to draw you away, you and Rook Shar will coordinate defense here, Ben instructed. Work with Commander Rushlight to implement full spectral scanning of all personnel and vessels. No one enters or leaves without complete quantum signature verification. As the command center erupted into focused activity, Ben felt the Imperial Omnitrix pulse with what he had come to recognize as anticipatory energy. The device seemed to respond not just to immediate threats, but to strategic developments, as if it possessed some form of predictive capability. Xylene noticed his momentary distraction. The Imperial Omnitrix is more deeply connected to you than Azimuth's original design, she observed quietly. It's not merely a tool you wield, but an extension of your consciousness. Sometimes I'm not sure where my thoughts end and its influence begins, Ben admitted. Speaking openly in a way he hadn't with the others. Is that normal? There is no normal for a device that shouldn't exist in our dimension, she replied. But perhaps that integration is precisal. Why what makes you effective against an enemy that transcends conventional boundaries? Their conversation was interrupted as Attea approached, now dressed in combat gear that emphasized functionality over imperial ostentation. Ships ready. Strike team assembled. We can depart in 3 minutes. Good, Ben nodded. Looma, Tetraman assault squad standing by, she confirmed, her own battle armor now in place, making her imposing presence even more formidable. Heavy weapons and containment equipment prepared as specified. Ben activated a secure channel on the command console. Rook Shar, Eunice, the Nexus is yours until we return. Standard protocol Sierra 9 if we don't report back within 6 hours. Both women acknowledged the order, their expressions professional despite the implicit understanding that Sierra 9 was the contingency protocol for coalition leadership loss. As the strike team assembled in the hangar bay, Ben found himself at the center of a unique gathering, an Inkerseen Empress, a Tetraman war princess, and an Uxorite magistrate, all following his lead despite their own considerable authority and experience. Interesting team composition, Xylene commented as they boarded Attea's sleek combat vessel. 3 galactically renowned leaders and yourself. 4 leaders, Ben corrected. Don't sell yourself short. A smile touched Xylene's features. I wasn't excluding myself, Benjamin. I was acknowledging that you now belong in that category, a reality you seem reluctant to fully accept. The observation struck uncomfortably close to truth. Despite the respect he'd earned, despite the Imperial Omnitrix choosing him, Ben still sometimes thought of himself as the teenager who had stumbled into heroism rather than the leader others now saw. Leadership wasn't something I sought, he responded as they took their positions for departure. Which is precisely why you're effective at it, Xylene replied. The most qualified leaders are often those who understand the weight of responsibility rather than the allure of power. The ship launched smoothly under Attea's expert piloting, accelerating toward the Mackler sector with impressive speed. The journey would take approximately 40 minutes, time Ben used to brief the team on what they might expect based on the Imperial Omnitrix's accumulated data on conversion nodes. The node will be protected by dimensional distortion fields similar to what we encountered with the plumber ship, he explained, projecting tactical holograms for the assembled strike team. But likely more sophisticated, with multiple defensive layers. My troops are equipped with phase shift compensators, Looma noted. They can maintain combat effectiveness even with up to 60% dimensional variance. The Inker-C-N infiltration team has adaptive optics that can penetrate most distortion fields, Attea added. And our weapons have been modified to affect targets that exist partially out of phase with normal spacetime. Xylene studied the tactical projections with a scientist's eye. These preparations are impressive, but potentially insufficient. The Morphoids adapt quickly. Each encounter teaches them how to counter our methods. Which is why we'll need to improvise once we're on site, Ben acknowledged. The Imperial Omnitrix can generate stabilization fields that should allow us to penetrate their defenses. But the specific approach will depend on what we find. Improvisation is the Inker-C military's specialty, Attea remarked with a confident smirk. While Tetramans are still reading their tactical manuals, we're already adapting to the battlefield reality. Looma's 4 hands clenched briefly before deliberately relaxing. And while Inker-C's are hopping to their next reckless engagement, Tetramans are establishing secure operational parameters that ensure mission success. Ben caught the subtle smile Xylene directed toward him, an acknowledgement of the complex team dynamics he was navigating. Despite their verbal sparring, both Attea and Looma were consummate professionals who understood the mission's importance transcended their cultural differences. We're approaching the Mackler outpost, Attea announced, her focus returning to the piloting controls. Preliminary scans show unusual energy patterns. The viewscreen displayed the research outpost, a collection of structures built into a small moon orbiting a gas giant. The entire facility was enveloped in a shimmering field of energy that pulsed with an unnatural rhythm. That's not a standard conversion node configuration, Ben observed. The Imperial Omnitrix feeding him comparative analysis. The energy pattern is more complex, more evolved. The dimensional harmonics are multiphasic, Xylene confirmed, studying the sensor readings. This node isn't just converting our spacetime, it's creating a layered reality pocket, with multiple dimensional frequencies overlapping. Can we penetrate it? Looma asked, her tactical mind focusing on the immediate challenge. Ben consulted the Imperial Omnitrix, processing the information it provided. Yes, but not conventionally. We'll need to match the harmonic freak UNC pattern exactly, slip between the layers rather than try to breach them directly. Like tuning an instrument to a specific resonance, Xylene elaborated. The Imperial Omnitrix can generate the correct frequency, but maintaining it while we operate within the node will require precise calibration. I'll handle that, Ben decided. Attea, bring us into range but maintain safe distance. We'll use a targeted approach, small team, minimal footprint. The ship settled into position approximately 2 kilometers from the distortion field. Close enough for detailed scanning but far enough to avoid immediate detection. I'm detecting approximately 43 distinct biosignatures within the outpost, Attea reported. But they're fluctuating, as if they're not fully present in our dimensional plane. The outpost staff, Looma surmised, being processed for dimensional conversion. They're still alive, Ben confirmed, the Imperial Omnitrix providing detailed analysis. But suspended, in a transitional state, not unlike what happened to the plumber crew, but more advanced in the conversion process. We can save them, Xylene stated with quiet certainty. But we must act quickly. On CE the dimensional integration passes 70%, reversal becomes exponentially more difficult. Ben turned to Attea. We need a stealth insertion pod. Something small enough to slip through their perimeter detection grid. Already prepared, she confirmed. 2-person capacity, minimal energy signature, reinforced for dimensional stress. Ben considered the team composition for the infiltration. Xylene, your dimensional expertise is essential. You'll accompany me. Attea, Looma, your forces need to be prepared for immediate extraction once we destabilize the node core. Both leaders acknowledged the plan, though neither looked entirely pleased about remaining behind while Ben and Xylene took the most dangerous role. If you're not back in 30 minutes, we're coming in after you, Attea stated flatly. Her tone making it clear this wasn't negotiable. With full tactical support, Looma added, her expression equally determined. Ben didn't argue, partly because he understood their perspective, and partly because he recognized the statement for what it was, concern masked as tactical assertion. The stealth pod was prepared quickly, its systems calibrated to the specific frequency pattern identified by the Imperial Omnitrix. As Ben and Xylene boarded the small craft, he felt a moment of unexpected connection with the Uxorite magistrate, a sense that they had worked together like this before. Despite the fact that their previous interactions had been limited. You seem troubled, Benjamin, Xylene observed as they launched from the main vessel, the POD's stealth systems rendering them nearly invisible. Not troubled, he clarified, guiding the pod toward the shimmering barrier. Just adjusting. Everything has happened so quickly since the Imperial Omnitrix chose me. So, at times it feels like I'm playing catch-up with my own circumstances. A common experience for those thrust into pivotal historical roles, she replied with surprising gentleness. I have observed many civilizations across many centuries. Benjamin. The individuals who most effectively navigate such transitions are those who maintain their core principles while adapting to new realities. The pod reached the outer boundary of the distortion field, hovering just at its edge. Ben activated the Imperial Omnitrix, generating a precisely calibrated energy field that enveloped their small vessel. Ready? He asked, poised to penetrate the barrier. Xylene's eyes glowed slightly as she activated her natural telekinetic abilities to supplement the Imperial Omnitrix's power. Proceed. The pod slid through the dimensional barrier with minimal resistance, the combined technologies creating a perfect resonance match that allowed them to pass undetected. Inside, the outpost appeared drastically transformed, its structures partially converted into crystalline formations that pulsed with alien energy. Remarkable, Xylene murmured, studying the transformation. The conversion process is creating GA hybridized reality, neither fully our dimension nor theirs. There, Ben pointed to a central structure where energy flows converged. That's the node core, the focal point generating the conversion field. They landed the pod in a concealed position and proceeded on foot, the Imperial Omnitrix's protective field keeping them phase-locked with the baseline reality despite the distortions around them. The experience was disorienting, walls and floors occasionally becoming transparent or shifting position as multiple dimensional states overlapped. The outpost personnel, Xylene noted, indicating floating crystalline structures that contained suspended figures. They're in dimensional stasis, their physical forms being gradually restructured at the quantum level. Ben approached one of the stasis fields, recognizing an Inkersine scientist he'd met briefly during the coalition formation. The Imperial Omnitrix pulsed, scanning the conversion process. They're at approximately 63% conversion, he determined. Still reversible, but we need to work quickly. Moving through the transformed outpost, they encountered no active resistance, an absence that struck both as suspicious rather than fortunate. They must know we're here, Ben whispered as they approached the central chamber housing the node core. Why no defensive response? Because our presence was anticipated, Xylene replied, her telekinetic senses extending beyond normal perception. Perhaps even desired. The central chamber opened before them, revealing a sight that confirmed their suspicions. The node core, a pulsating crystalline structure that towered from floor to ceiling, was surrounded by 12 figures. Unlike the suspended outpost personnel, these entities moved with purpose, their forms shifting between solid matter and energy states in a fluid dance. Morphoid elites, Ben identified, the Imperial Omnitrix providing classification data. Much more advanced than the scout we encountered on Earth. Welcome, Wielder, spoke one of the figures, its voice resonating through multiple dimensional frequencies simultaneously. We have waited for this encounter. You know who I am, Ben stated. The Imperial Omnitrix's protective field intensifying around him and Xylene. We know what you carry, the Morphoid corrected. The Imperial device, a technology from a dimension we have already claimed. Its presence here is an anomaly we seek to correct. By converting our entire dimension, Xylene challenged, her telekinetic energy visibly manifesting around her slender form. By transfo, RMING all indigenous life into compatible forms. Conversion is preservation, another Morphoid responded. Your dimensional frequency is unstable, decaying. We offer evolutionary advancement, transcendence beyond your current limitations. Quote. Ben felt the Imperial Omnitrix pulse with what seemed like disagreement. You're not preserving anything. You're consuming entire realities to fuel your expansion. The lead Morphoid shifted closer, its form rippling with power. The device you carry, it shows you only what its creators wished you to see. Partial truths. We offer complete understanding. Manipulation, Xylene stated flatly. A classic technique of conquerors throughout history, presenting domination as salvation. The Morphoid's attention shifted to her. The Uxorite understands time and dimensional flux. Yet even her species' perception is limited by biological constraints. Its form shifted again, patterns of energy coalescing into something more defined. We can show you what true why awaits all dimensional planes without our intervention. The chamber around them suddenly transformed, reality itself peeling away to reveal what appeared to be a visualization of cosmic scale events, dimensions collapsing. Entire universal structures failing, a cascade of reality breakdown that spanned incomprehensible distances and timescales. This is the natural progression, the Morphoid continued. Dimensional entropy leading to complete cosmic failure. Our conversion process stabilizes this decay. Ben felt the Imperial Omnitrix pulse more urgently, its energy counteracting the Morphoid's reality manipulation. The apocalyptic vision wavered, then shattered like glass, returning them to the node chamber. Impressive resistance, the Morphoid acknowledged. The Imperial device has bonded deeply with your consciousness. This makes you valuable, potentially the most efficient conversion template we have encountered in this dimension. I didn't come here to be converted, Ben stated firmly. I came to shut down this node and free the people you've captured. A limited perspective reflecting limited understanding, the Morphoid responded. But perhaps demonstration rather than explanation will prove more effective. Without warning, the node core pulsed with blinding energy. The dimensional distortions throughout the chamber intensified, reality itself seeming to fold and refract around them. Ben felt the Imperial Omnitrix respond automatically, its protective field expanding to shield both him and Xylene from the worst effects. They're accelerating the conversion process, Xylene warned, her telekinetic abilities straining to maintain her own dimensional stability, attempting to force our integration with their reality matrix. Ben focused his will through the Imperial Omnitrix, pushing back against the conversion energy. The device responded, purple energy streaming outward to create a stable zone within the chaos. We need to disrupt the node core directly, he determined, analyzing the structure through the Imperial Omnitrix's sensors. It's powered by a quantum oscillation circuit at its center. If we can destabilize that. My telekinesis can reach the core, Xylene offered, her eyes glowing with increased power. But penetrating the defensive fields will require precise harmonic matching, which the Imperial Omnitrix can provide, Ben confirmed, understanding flowing between them with remarkable synchronicity. On my mark, the Morphoids moved to intercept them, recognizing their intention. Their forms shifted into more aggressive configurations, tendrils of dimensional energy lashing out toward the intruders. Ben channeled power through the Imperial Omnitrix, creating a precisely calibrated energy pulse that matched the node core's harmonic frequency but with a destabilizing phase shift. Simultaneously, Xylene projected her telekinetic force through this energy, creating a combined attack that penetrated the core's defenses with surgical precision. The result was immediate and dramatic. The node core's rhythmic pulsing faltered, then accelerated erratically. Cracks appeared in its crystalline structure, leaking brilliant energy that seemed to burn through the very fabric of the hybrid reality they occupied. Containment failure imminent, one of the Morphoids announced, its tone devoid of emotion despite the critical situation. Tactical withdrawal recommended. Quote, conversion progress insufficient for harvesting, another responded. Indigenous specimens still viable for future processing. The lead Morphoid's attention remained fixed on Ben, its form fluctuating more rapidly as the node destabilization progressed. This confrontation is merely preliminary, Wielder. The Imperial device cannot protect your dimension indefinitely. We'll see about that, Ben replied, channeling more power through the Imperial Omnitrix to accelerate the core's breakdown. The Morphoids began to phase shift, their forms becoming increasingly transparent as they initiated withdrawal from the failing node. Within moments, They had vanished completely, leaving Ben and Xylene alone with the critically destabilized core and the suspended outpost personnel. The stasis fields are failing, Xylene observed, monitoring the crystalline structures containing the captured scientists. They'll be released when the node collapses, but E-dimensional trauma could be fatal without protection. I can extend the Imperial Omnitrix's field to stabilize them during transition, Ben determined, already modifying the protective energy to encompass the stasis chambers. But we'll need immediate extraction once the node fully collapses. He activated his communication link to the waiting strike team. Attea, Looma, prepare for immediate extraction. Node destabilization in progress. Multiple survivors requiring dimensional stabilization during transport. Already moving, came Attea's prompt response. Inkersine medical team standing by with phase stabilizers. Tetraman extraction squads approaching your coordinates, Looma added. Dimensional fluctuation increasing but still within operational parameters. The node core's destabilization accelerated. The entire chamber now shuddering with dimensional stress. The stasis fields containing the outpost personnel shimmered and began to dissolve, releasing their occupants into the unstable environment. Ben expanded the Imperial Omnitrix's protective field to encompass as many as possible, while Xylene used her telekinetic abilities to gather the disoriented survivors into a manageable group. This way, she directed, creating a telekinetic pathway through the increasingly chaotic surroundings. Move quickly but stay together within the stabilization field. They proceeded through the transforming outpost. The once solid structures now dissolving back into normal space as the conversion process reversed. Outside, they could see the dimensional barrier thinning, the distinctive silhouettes of Inkersine and Tetraman extraction vessels moving into position. Almost there, Ben encouraged the dazed survivors, many of whom were still struggling with the aftereffects of partial dimensional conversion. Stay within the protected zone. They reached the extraction point just as reality itself seemed to tear around them, the dimensional pocket beginning its final collapse. Tetraman troops in heavy environmental suits formed a perimeter, while Inkersine medical personnel rushed forward with specialized equipment to stabilize the affected scientists. Move, She commanded from the lead extraction vessel, her normally imperious tone now focused entirely on operational efficiency. We've got 90 seconds before complete dimensional reversion. The Survivo RS were quickly transferred to the waiting ships, special containment chambers ready to maintain their dimensional stability during the transition back to normal space. Ben and Xylene boarded last, maintaining their protective fields until all personnel were secure. Everyone accounted for? Looma asked, checking manifest data against biosignature scans. All 43 outpost personnel recovered. Confirmed an Inkersine medical officer. Varying levels of dimensional trauma, but all vital signs stabilizing. Ben deactivated the Imperial Omnitrix's external field, though the device continued to pulse with active energy. Get us out of here. The node's about to completely collapse. The extraction vessels pulled away from the outpost with practiced precision, accelerating to safe distance. Just as the dimensional pocket reached critical failure. The implosion, when it came, was both spectacular and eerily silent, a flash of impossible colors followed by a wave of distorted spacetime. Chi rippled outward before dissipating into normal reality. Where the outpost had stood, only floating debris remained. Physical matter returned to normal space but structurally compromised by its dimensional adventure. Successful neutralization, Xylene stated, though her tone lacked triumph. But the Morphoids withdrew before the collapse. They'll establish new nodes elsewhere. But we've proven they can be defeated, Ben countered. And we've rescued everyone they captured at this location. That's a victory worth acknowledging. Xylene studied him with a mixture of approval and something more complex. You balance optimism with pragmatism more effectively than you once did, Benjamin. It's impressive. The fleet regrouped and set course back to the Coalition Nexus, the rescued person. L transferred to medical facilities for treatment and dimensional stabilization. Ben found himself in the command conference room with Attea, Looma, and Xylene, debriefing on their encounter while the Imperial Omnitrix compiled its data on the Morphoid technology they'd observed. They knew about the Imperial Omnitrix, Ben noted, troubled by this revelation. Not just its existence, but its origin. That it came from a dimension they'd already conquered. Which suggests they've encountered it before, Xylene concluded. Perhaps even confronted previous wielders. And presumably defeated them, Looma added, her tactical mind immediately grasping the concerning implication. Otherwise, how would the device have crossed dimensional boundaries to reach us? Attea leaned forward, her expression unusually serious. The Morphoid said something about you being an efficient conversion template. What exactly did it mean by that? Ben glanced down at the Imperial Omnitrix, which pulsed softly as if acknowledging the question. I think, because the device has integrated so deeply with my consciousness, they see me as an ideal subject for their conversion process. A bridge between their reality paradigm and ours. Which makes you both our greatest asset and potentially our greatest vulnerability, Xylene observed. If they could convert you while you're bonded with the Imperial Omnitrix, they could potentially accelerate their entire dimensional conquest, Looma finished, her 4 hands clenching briefly. You'll need additional security protocols immediately. I'm more concerned with what they showed us. Ben countered. That vision of dimensional collapse, was it manipulation as Xylene suggested, or is there some truth to their claim that they're preventing cosmic entropy? A classic false dichotomy, Xylene replied, presenting only 2 options when others exist. Even if dimensional decay is a genuine concern, forced conversion of all sentient life is hardly the only potential solution. Agreed, Looma stated firmly. Tetraman philosophy is clear on this point. No preservation method that destroys what it claims to save can be considered valid. Attea, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, finally spoke. The Incarsine Empire has conquered many worlds, something I was once unquestioningly proud of. But we've never claimed to be saving those we subjugated. Her expression hardened with surprising conviction. At least we're honest about our imperialism. The Morphoid's claim of benevolent conversion is just conquest with a veneer of cosmic justification. Ben found himself studying Attea with new appreciation. Her perspective had evolved significantly from the impulsive, power-hungry princess he'd known years ago. The question remains, Xylene redirected them to the practical matter at hand. How do we counter an enemy that adapts so quickly and operates across dimensional boundaries? The Imperial Omnitrix pulsed, projecting a holographic representation of the node core they had destroyed, along with detailed analysis of its structure and function. We developed technology that does the same, Ben decided, the solution crystallizing in his mind as the Imperial Omnitrix fed him technical insights. Using what we've learned from this node, we can create dimensional stabilization beacons, devices that reinforce our reality's natural frequency against conversion attempts. A dimensional immune system, Xylene elaborated, immediately grasping the concept. Strengthening our universe's resistance to foreign dimensional intrusion. Exactly, Ben confirmed. The Imperial Omnitrix contains the technical specifications needed to develop prototype beacons. With Galvan and Uxorite scientific support, we could have functional units ready for deployment within days. The Incarsine fleet can handle distribution once they're operational, Attea offered. Our ships are the fastest in the coalition. And Tetraman Engineering Corps can assist with mass production. Looma added, her strategic mind already calculating resource requirements and deployment patterns. As they continued planning, Ben felt a growing sense of purpose, not just in confronting the Morphoid threat, but in witnessing the unprecedented cooperation between historically adversarial species. The coalition was evolving from a necessary alliance into something with greater potential, a framework for collaboration that might outlast the immediate crisis. He caught Xylene studying him with an expression that suggested she was following his thoughts. You're seeing beyond the current conflict, she observed quietly while the others continued tactical discussions. Considering the coalition's long-term implications. Is that so surprising? He asked. A subtle smile touched her features. Not surprising, Benjamin. Encouraging. The most significant transformations often emerge from crisis responses that reveal new possibilities. Their conversation was interrupted as Eunice and Rook Shar entered the conference room, both carrying data crystals containing their research findings. We've completed preliminary analysis of the dimensional seed technology, Eunice announced, activating a holographic display that showed detailed schematics. It's more sophisticated than we initially believed, with capabilities beyond simple dimensional manipulation. The seeds don't just create dimensional pockets, Rook Shar elaborated, highlighting specific components in the projection. They actually record and analyze our reality's fundamental properties, essential L. Why creating a comprehensive dimensional blueprint of our universe? For what purpose? Looma asked, studying the technical data with sharp focus. We believe they're creating a complete dimensional map, Eunice explained. Identifying key points where our reality's structural integrity is weakest, prime targets for large-scale conversion efforts. Ben processed this information, the Imperial Omnitrix supplementing his understanding with additional context. So the node we destroyed at the outpost wasn't just a conversion point, it was a reconnaissance tool. Gathering intelligence for their main offensive. Precisely, Rook Shar confirmed, and based on the data patterns we've extracted, they're focusing their mapping efforts on regions with naturally occurring dimensional instabilities. Like the Anor system, Xylene noted. The implications immediately clear. Their interest in that region isn't just because of its natural instabilities, it's because those instabilities provide a comprehensive view of our dimension's structural weaknesses. Attea straightened, military alertness evident in her posture. So securing the Anor system isn't just about preventing a potential convergence point. It's about denying them critical strategic intelligence. Which makes our defensive deployment there even more urgent, Looma concluded, already reaching for her communication device to update her forces. As the coalition leadership mobilized to address this new understanding of the threat, Ben found himself at the center of a rapidly evolving strategic response, not just leading, as Xylene had described it, but facilitating the contributions of remarkable individuals from across the galaxy. The Imperial Omnitrix pulsed against his wrist, seemingly resonating with his thoughts. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever the Morphoids had planned, they would face it together, not just as reluctant allies bound by necessity, but as a coalition growing stronger through shared purpose. Chapter 3. Convergence Point. The Anor system loomed before them, a cluster of worlds shrouded in perpetual twilight. Ancient stars cast sickly illumination across the 5 planets orbiting at irregular intervals. Their surfaces marred by millennia of dimensional instability. Between Anor Phatos and Anor Transil, space itself appeared wounded, reality rippling like disturbed water where the boundaries be. Between dimensions had grown perilously thin. The coalition armada held position at the system's edge, hundreds of vessels representing 24 civilizations united by existential necessity. At its center, the newly completed command carrier, Unity, served as the fleet's nerve center, its revolutionary design incorporating technological contributions from each coalition member. On the Unity's observation deck, Ben Tennyson stood alone, watching distant flashes of energy where Tetraman defense platforms engaged advanced Morphoid scouts. The Imperial Omnitrix pulsed softly against his wrist, nodding with the dimensional distortions permeating the system. Beautiful, in its way, came Xylene's voice as she approached silently, her graceful form illuminated by the ethereal light of the dimensional boundary. The universe revealing its fundamental structure at points of weakness. Ben nodded, appreciating her unique perspective. Boundaries are always where the most interesting things happen. Between nations, between species, between dimensions, she completed, standing beside him. And between individuals. The subtle emphasis wasn't lost on him. Over the past weeks, as the coalition preparations intensified, the dynamics between Ben and his 5 closest advisors had evolved in unexpected ways. Professional respect had deepened into something more complex, something none of the M had openly addressed amid the looming crisis. Our final dimensional stabilization beacon is in position, Xylene reported, her tone shifting to tactical matters. Eunice has confirmed optimal calibration across all 37 units. And Morphoid activity, increasing exponentially, she replied, gesturing toward a tactical hologram that materialized between them. Rook Shar's reconnaissance. E-Team reports dimensional incursions accelerating throughout the system. Their patterns suggest preparation for a major convergence event. The hologram displayed Morphoid movements as streams of RGY converging toward the spatial rift between Anor Phatos and Anor Transil, precisely where coalition intelligence had predicted their culmination point would form. They're committing fully to this location, Ben observed, studying the patterns, abandoning other conversion nodes across the galaxy to concentrate their efforts here. A strategic gamble, Xylene agreed. One that offers both opportunity and danger. The observation deck door slid open, admitting Attea, Looma, Rook Shar, and Eunice, the core leadership team that had emerged through weeks of crisis management. Each had shed the formalities of their respective cultures, now dressed in practical combat attire modified to their physiological needs. Final fleet deployment complete, Attea announced, her characteristic smirk tempered by the gravity of their situation. Incursione strike squadrons in forward position, cloaking fields engaged. Ready to spring our little ambush when the party starts. Tetraman defense platforms report optimal functionality. Looma added, her forearms crossed in what Ben now recognized as her posture of contained anticipation rather than impatience. Dimensional stability fields operating at 94% efficiency, sufficient to protect our forces during engagement. Rook Shar approached the tactical display, adjusting parameters with practiced precision. Reconnaissance drones. Confirm morphoid convergence acceleration. Estimated 37 minutes until they reach critical mass for dimensional restructuring. The stabilization beacons are synchronized and ready for activation, Eunice completed the briefing. The circuitry patterns beneath her skin glowing subtly as she interfaced with the Coalition's technological network. Energy reserves at maximum capacity. Ben S. tutored his team, 5 extraordinary women from vastly different backgrounds, each bringing unique capabilities and perspectives that had proven essential to their survival thus far. The weight of countless lives throughout the galaxy rested on their shoulders, yet they stood unbowed, determined. You all know what's at stake, he began, the Imperial Omnitrix pulsing in rhythm with his words. The Orphoids believe our dimension is dying, that their conversion is necessary for survival. Whether that's truth or manipulation doesn't matter. Their method would destroy everything that makes our universe worth preserving. The diversity they seek to homogenize is our greatest strength, Xylene observed. Precisely, Ben agreed. Our coalition proves that different species, different cultures find common purpose without sacrificing their unique identities. That's what we're fighting for today. Not just survival, but the right to determine our own evolutionary path. The Imperial Omnitrix suddenly flared with intense energy, projecting a 3-dimensional map of the Anor system overlaid with complex quantum equations. They've begun, Ben stated, reading the data streaming through his consciousness. The convergence has entered its initial phase. The observation deck viewports automatically polarized as brilliant energy erupted between Anor Phatos and Anor Transil. The spatial rift widened dramatically. Tendrils of impossible light reaching outward like cosmic fingers trying to reshape reality itself. All vessels, battle stations, Looma commanded through the fleet-wide communication array. Maintain dimensional stabilization fields at maximum output. Synchronizing stabilization beacons, Eunice reported, her hands dancing across the control interface as green circuitry patterns cascaded across her skin. Establishing dimensional resonance lock. Throughout the system, 37 stabilization beacons activated simultaneously, each projecting a field of energy liberated to reinforce normal spacetime against dimensional manipulation. The combined effect created a lattice of stable reality intersecting the morphoid convergence point. They're responding, Rook Shar observed as the tactical display showed morphoid energy signatures shifting patterns, adjusting their convergence harmonics to bypass our stabilization grid. Just as we anticipated, Attea noted with grim satisfaction. Deploy Phase 2. At her command, previously concealed Incursione vessels decloaked directly within the morphoid formation, deploying specialized disruption devices designed to fragment the convergence field. Simultaneously, Tetraman defense platforms activated gravitational pulse weapons that further distorted the morphoid's carefully calculated dimensional mathematics. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The convergence field fluctuated wildly, brilliant energy discharging in chaotic bursts as the morphoids struggled to maintain control of their grand design. It's working, Eunice confirmed. Monitoring the dimensional readings, convergence efficiency dropping to 67% and falling. But they're adapting, Ben noted, the Imperial Omnitrix eating him real-time analysis of the morphoid response, recalibrating their approach, shifting to a multinodal convergence pattern rather than a single focal point. The view screen confirmed his assessment. The morphoid energy signatures were redistributing across the system, establishing smaller convergence points that collectively performed the function previously concentrated in one location. Clever bastards, Attea muttered. Like cutting off a hydra's head only to have 3 more grow back. Not 3, Looma corrected, studying the tactical display. 27 distinct convergence nodes forming simultaneously. Our stabilization grid can't maintain integrity against that many distributed points, Rook Shar warned, calculations flowing across her console. We designed it to counter a single, powerful convergence, not multiple smaller ones. Ben felt the Imperial Omnitrix pulse with increasing urgency, almost as if it were suggesting something. Knowledge flowed through his consciousness, complex dimensional mathematics and quantum field theories beyond anything he could have comprehended before bonding with the device. We need to adapt as quickly as they do, he decided. Eunice, can you reconfigure the stabilization beacons to create a resonance wave instead of a static field? Eunice immediately grasped the concept, her expression lighting with understanding. A dimensional harmonic that propagates through the system rather than remains fixed. Yes, theoretically possible, but it would require precise synchronization across all 37 beacons. Which would normally be impossible without hours of recalibration, Xylene observed, but with the Imperial Omnitrix's processing capability. I can calculate the necessary adjustments in real time, Ben confirmed. The device contains dimensional mathematics specifically designed to counter morphoid technology. Without hesitation, he interfaced the Imperial Omnitrix with the Coalition's command network. Purple energy flowed from the device into the ship's systems, complex calculations executing at speeds that would have impressed even Azimuth. Throughout the Anor system, stabilization beacons received new programming, their energy signatures shifting from static barriers to dynamic, propagating waves. Remarkable, Xylene murmured, watching the transformation with scientific appreciation. The beacons are generating a counter-harmonic that adapts to the morphoid's convergence frequency in real time. The effect was visible even to the naked eye. As the propagating waves spread through the system, morphoid convergence points flickered and destabilized, unable to maintain coherence against the constantly shifting defensive field. They're losing cohesion, Attea reported, unable to fully suppress her satisfaction. Inkersine squadrons report morphoid energy signatures fragmenting across all sectors. Not fragmenting, Ben corrected, the Imperial Omnitrix providing deeper insight. Consolidating. They're abandoning the distributed approach and committing everything to a single, overwhelming effort. The tactical display confirmed his assessment. Morphoid energy signatures from AC. Ross the system were racing toward a single point, a massive convergence forming directly at the fleet's position. They're targeting the Unity, Looma realized, already activating additional defensive systems. They've identified it as the control center for our stabilization network. More specifically, they're targeting me, Ben stated with calm certainty. Or rather, the Imperial Omnitrix. I've realized it's the key to our defense capability. Rook Shar's console flashed urgent warnings. Dimensional distortion approaching critical levels. Estimated 90 seconds until full convergence. Materializes directly within our perimeter. All vessels, execute tactical pattern Zeta 3, Looma commanded, her military training evident in her composed efficiency. Establish layered defense grid around the Unity. Too late for that, Attea countered. We need to take the fight to them before they fully materialize. Offensive formation Alpha Strike. Both approaches are tactically sound, but insufficient against this scale of dimensional manipulation, Xylene interjected. We need to address the fundamental nature of their convergence, not merely its manifestation. Ben studied the converging energy patterns. The Imperial Omnitrix feeding him insights beyond conventional analysis. What he saw wasn't just an attack, it was communication, a complex statement expressed through dimensional mathematics rather than words. They're creating a direct bridge between dimensions, he realized. Not just a conversion point, but a complete merger of realities. They're trying to force our universe to harmonize with theirs at the quantum level. Can our stabilization network withstand that level of dimensional pressure? Eunice asked, her expression concerned as she monitored the system's increasing strain. Not indefinitely, Ben admitted, but we don't need to maintain it indefinitely. We just need to establish communication. His statement drew surprised looks from the others. Communication, Attea echoed incredulously. With the dimension-consuming parasites. That's your grand strategy. Not with them, Ben clarified. With their dimension itself. The Imperial Omnitrix contains data on the fundamental frequency of their reality. If we can establish harmonic resonance on our terms rather than theirs, we could potentially negotiate a stable boundary rather than fight an endless battle against conversion. Xylene completed, immediately grasping the concept. Dimensional diplomacy rather than dimensional warfare. Exactly, Ben confirmed, but all need direct contact with the convergence point to establish the necessary harmonic pattern. Direct contact. Looma's four fists clenched simultaneously. That's suicide. The convergence energy would tear apart any matter from our dimension that entered it. Not if that matter was protected by the Imperial Omnitrix, Ben countered. It exists partially outside conventional dimensional constraints, that's why the Morphoids fear it. It can operate within their reality framework without being subject to it. Even so, the risks are incalculable, Rook Shar argued. We have no empirical data on how the device would perform under such extreme conditions. We have limited options and less time, Ben responded, his decision already made. Eunice, configure the stabilization network to amplify whatever signal the Imperial Omnitrix generates. Attea, Looma, your forces need to maintain defensive positions around the Unity in case this doesn't work. And if it does work, Attea challenged, what exactly are you hoping to accomplish? Dimensional equilibrium, Ben answered. A stable boundary between our realities that doesn't require either side's destruction or conversion. The Imperial Omnitrix pulsed with increasing intensity, projecting complex mathematical formulas that swirled around them like violet constellations. Ben recognized them as dimensional resonance patterns, the quantum signatures of reality itself. Those are beautiful, Eunice observed, her technological nature allowing her to appreciate the mathematical elegance of the formulas. They're also our salvation, Xylene noted. If properly implemented. Ben moved toward the observation deck's airlock, the Imperial Omnitrix already generating a protective field around him. I'll need to enter the convergence point directly. The Omnitrix's signal will be strongest at the dimensional boundary itself. You're not going alone, Attea stated flatly, checking her specialized environment suit systems. Someone needs to watch you. Our back while you're playing dimensional diplomat. I concur, Looma added, her battle armor already activating. A minimum security detail is tactically required. The convergence field will destroy conventional matter. Ben reminded them, only the Imperial Omnitrix can provide sufficient protection. Then extend its field to include us, Xylene suggested calmly. If its power truly derives from dimensional manipulation, such an extension should be within its capabilities. Ben considered this, consulting the knowledge flowing from the device. It's possible, but I can only extend the field to protect two additional people without compromising its effectiveness. The five women exchanged glances, a silent communication passing between them. Xylene should accompany you, Eunice suggested pragmatically. Her dimensional knowledge exceeds any of ours. And Attea, Looma added, surprising everyone with her recommendation. Her combat skills would provide optimal security should the diplomatic approach fail. Attea raised an eyebrow at Looma. Well, first time you've acknowledged Incursine tactical superiority. I'm acknowledging your individual capabilities, Looma corrected. Though with less formality than usual. Your species still lacks proper understanding of structured battlefield operations. Your species still thinks hitting problems really hard counts as strategy, Attea shot back. Though the exchange lacked its former animosity. If you two are quite finished with your traditional pre-mission ritual, Xylene interjected dryly, we have a dimensional convergence to address. Ben activated the Imperial Omnitrix's protective field, extending it to encompass both Attea and Xylene. Purple energy flowed around all three, creating a bubble of stable spacetime. That would theoretically protect them within the convergence zone. Eunice, you have command of the stabilization network, Ben instructed. Rook Shar, coordinate fleet tactical operations. Looma, maintain defensive perimeter around the Unity at all costs. Understood, all three confirmed simultaneously. The convergence has reached critical mass, Rook Shar reported. Dimensional rupture imminent. As if on cue, space itself tore open before the Unity's observation deck, creating a swirling vortex of impossible colors and geometries that defied comprehension. Within this dimensional wound, shadowy forms could be seen moving with purpose, morphoid entities gathering at the boundary between realities. That's our cue, Attea remarked, checking her specialized weaponry one final time. Ready to make dimensional history. Tennyson. Ben nodded, feeling the Imperial Omnitrix pulse in rhythm with the convergence field itself. Stay within the protective field at all times. If we get separated, return to the Unity immediately. With that final instruction, the three of them stepped through the airlock and into the void. The Imperial Omnitrix's field allowed them to traverse the empty space between the ship and the convergence point, moving as if walking on invisible pathways through the vacuum. As they approached the dimensional rift, reality itself became increasingly distorted. Stars stretched into impossible shapes, light bent at angles that shouldn't exist, and the very concept of direction seemed to lose meaning. Only the purple glow of the Imperial Omnitrix provided a stable reference point in the chaos. Fascinating, Xylene commented, her scientific curiosity evident despite the peril. The convergence is creating a hybrid space where both dimensional frameworks partially apply. Neither fully ours nor theirs. Like diplomatic neutral ground, Ben observed. Or a battlefield where neither side has home field advantage, Attea added pragmatically. They reached the edge of the rift, hovering at the boundary between dimensions. Beyond the threshold, they could see glimpses of the morphoid reality, a crystalline landscape of impossible geometries where matter and energy existed in states that defied conventional physics. Their dimension is beautiful, Xylene observed softly. In its own alien way. Beautiful things can still kill you, Attea reminded her. Just ask any Venusian silk widow. The Imperial Omnitrix pulsed more intensely as they approached the boundary, responding to the proximity of its dimensional counterpart. Ben felt knowledge flowing through him. Not just data but understanding of the fundamental mathematics that defined reality itself. I need to establish contact with their dimensional consciousness, he explained, extending his hand toward the rift. Every reality has a baseline frequency, a quantum signature that defines its fundamental nature. If I can harmonize our frequencies without allowing either to overwhelm the other, you'll create dimensional détente, Xylene finished. A stable boundary where interaction is possible without conversion. That's the theory, Ben acknowledged. Whether they'll accept such an arrangement is another question entirely. Quote, only one way to find out, Attea remarked, positioning herself protectively at Ben's side. Make your move, Tennyson. I'll handle anything that objects. Ben extended his arm into the rift, the Imperial Omnitrix leading the way. As the device crossed the dimensional threshold, it flared with brilliant purple energy, establishing a connection between reality. Ties that manifested as streams of mathematical formulas flowing through the void. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The chaotic energy of the convergence field suddenly stabilized, coalescing into a more defined structure. Within this structure, morphoid entities took more coherent form, their fluid bodies crystallizing into configurations that resembled humanoid shapes, though with geometries that remained fundamentally alien. One entity separated from the others, approaching the boundary where Ben stood. Unlike the others, its form was more complex, incorporating elements that seemed designed specifically to facilitate communication across dimensional barriers. Wielder of the Imperial device, it addressed Ben, its voice somehow transmitting directly into his mind rather than through conventional sound. You seek discourse rather than destruction. Unexpected. Your conversion efforts leave us little choice but to resist, Ben responded. But resistance isn't our preference. Coexistence is. Coexistence. The entity's form shifted, expressing what might have been skepticism. Our dimensional frequencies are fundamentally incompatible in their natural state. Without conversion, interaction breeds mutual destruction. That was true, Ben acknowledged, before the Imperial Omnitrix provided an alternative approach. He activated a specific function within the device, projecting a complex mathematical formula into the space between dimensions, a proposed harmonic that would allow both realities to maintain their integrity while establishing stable points of contact. Morphoid entity studied the projection, its crystalline body refracting the mathematical light in ways that suggested deep analysis. This approach has not been attempted in our encounters with 17,436 previous dimensions. Perhaps because none of those dimensions had the benefit of the Imperial Omnitrix, Xylene suggested. Or perhaps because conversion was simpler than negotiation. The entity's attention shifted to her. The Uxorite speaks with unexpected insight. Your species comprehends dimensional mechanics beyond most carbon-based life forms. We've had millennia to study the boundaries between realities, Xylene replied. Knowledge your kind might have benefited from had you sought exchange rather than conversion. Exchange requires compatibility, the entity countered. Conversion creates compatibility. At the cost of diversity, Ben argued. You preserve the form but lose the essence of what makes each dimension unique. There's another way. A balance point where both realities can exist independently while still allowing controlled interaction. The Imperial Omnitrix projected an expanded version of the harmonic formula, No. W incorporating feedback from the morphoid entity's own dimensional signature. The mathematics evolved before their eyes, growing more complex yet more elegant, a symphony of quantum relationships that defined a new type of boundary. This proposal, the morphoid seemed to hesitate, its crystalline structure shifting in what might have been consideration. It preserves fundamental dimensional integrity while allowing selective permeability at designated convergence points. Exactly, Ben confirmed. Neither dimension would need to convert or consume the other. We could establish regulated gateways where exchange could occur under controlled conditions. Exchange of what? The entity questioned. Our civilizations exist in incompatible states. Knowledge, Xylene offered immediately. Formation transcends physical limitations. Your understanding of dimensional mechanics, our diversity of cultural perspectives. Resources, Attea added pragmatically. Certain elements must exist in both dimensional frameworks, even if in different states. Controlled conversion of specific materials rather than entire realities. The morphoid entities form pulsed with internal light, suggesting communication with others of its kind beyond the dimensional boundary. After what seemed like an eternity but was likely only moments, it responded. Your proposal merits consideration. However, verification of viability requires demonstration. The Imperial Omnitrix can create a prototype gateway, Ben offered. A small, controlled convergence point where our dimensions can interact without either overwhelming the other. Proceed. The entity agreed, moving slightly aside to create space within the boundary zone. Ben focused his will through the Imperial Omnitrix, channeling its energy to create exactly what he had described. Purple light flowed from the device, interweaving with the crystalline energies of the morphoid dimension. Where they met, a stable structure began to form, a geometric framework of interlocking mathematical relationships that defined a new type of space. Within this framework, matter and energy from both dimensions could exist simultaneously without conflict. The physics of both realities applied, yet neither dominated. It was, in essence, a dimensional embassy, a neutral territory where fundamentally incompatible beings could interact. Dimensional stability at 97% and holding. Xylene reported, her natural sensitivity to spatial mechanics allowing her to assess the gateway's integrity. The harmonic resonance is self-sustaining. The morphoid entity extended a crystalline appendage into the gateway space, its structure remaining stable rather than attempting to convert the surrounding area. Similarly, when Attea cautiously placed her hand within the zone, her matter remained unchanged despite exposure to the alien dimensional properties. The demonstration appears successful, the entity acknowledged. A novel approach to dimensional interaction that has not been previously documented in our archives. This is just the beginning, Ben explained. With further refinement, we could establish permanent gateways at key locations, allowing ongoing exchange while maintaining the distinct nature of both dimensions. And what guarantee exists that such gateways would not be weaponized? The entity challenged. That your Scion would not attempt conversion of ours once the technology is developed. The same guarantee that you would not resume conversion efforts, Ben countered. Mutual assured destruction. Any attempt to weaponize the gateways would destabilize the dimensional boundary for both sides. The entity considered this, its crystalline structure shifting through configurations that might have represented internal debate. Your coalition demonstrates unusual cooperation between biologically diverse species. This suggests capacity for interaction with truly alien consciousness. Diversity is our strength, Ben confirmed. Different perspectives allow us to find solutions that no single species could develop alone. A concept foreign to our collective, the entity admitted. Our dimension evolved toward uniformity rather than diversity, a single optimal state rather than multiple viable variations. Perhaps that's why you sought to convert other dimensions, Xylene suggested. To incorporate difference rather than develop it internally. The entity's form shifted again, this time in what seemed like acknowledgement. A perspective worthy of consideration. Our methods have been consistent for millennia, perhaps to our limitation. Quote, the prototype gateway pulsed with renewed energy as the Imperial Omnitrix adjusted its parameters, strengthening the dimensional interface. Within this stabilized zone, communication became more direct, thoughts and concepts flowing more easily between the fundamentally different forms of consciousness. We propose a treaty, Ben stated, the Imperial Omnitrix, projecting the complex mathematical formulas that would define such an agreement in terms both dimensions could understand. Cessation of all conversion activities in exchange for establishment of regulated gateway points. Both dimensions maintain sovereignty over their respective realities while cooperating on matters of mutual concern. Such as dimensional decay, the entity noted. Our prima motivation for conversion was preservation against entropy, a threat that affects all dimensional constructs. A threat better addressed through combined knowledge than through assimilation, Xylene countered. Multiple approaches to the same problem increase the probability of finding effective solutions. The entity communicated again with its collective beyond the boundary, the crystalline structures throughout the convergence zone pulsing in synchronized patterns. Finally, it returned its attention to Ben. We accept your proposal, wielder of the Imperial device. A treaty of non-conversion and cooperative exchange. The mathematics you have projected will serve as the foundation of our agreement. Relief washed through Ben, though he maintained his focus on the gateway's stability. Quote, the coalition will begin withdrawing offensive forces immediately. Our stabilization network can be reconfigured to support the prototype gateways rather than prevent convergence. Our entities will recall all conversion nodes from your dimension, the Morphoid confirmed. The resources will be redirected to gateway construction at mutually agreed locations. As they finalize the agreement, translating diplomatic terms into mathematical formulas that both dimensional frameworks could enforce, Ben felt the Imperial Omnitrix pulse with what seemed like approval. The device that had chosen him, that had integrated with his consciousness and transformed his understanding of reality, had ultimately led not to a decisive military victory but to an unprecedented diplomatic resolution. The coalition leadership will need to ratify this agreement, Ben explained. Representatives from all member species should be present for the formal establishment of the first permanent gateway. Our collective will send appropriate emissaries. The entity agreed. The dimensional mathematics of this treaty will ensure compliance from all our subdivisions. With the preliminary agreement established, Ben, Attea, and Xylene prepared to return to the Unity. The prototype gateway would remain active, maintained by the Imperial Omnitrix's connection to the stabilization network, serving as proof of concept for the larger diplomatic framework to follow. As they turned to leave, the Morphoid entity issued a final observation. Wielder of the Imperial device, your approach diverges significantly from previous bearers. They sought power through dimensional conquest. You seek balance through dimensional cooperation. Different circumstances, different solutions, Ben replied simply. Perhaps, the entity seemed to consider, or perhaps different fundamental nature. A variable worth studying through our future exchanges. The return journey to the Unity felt substantially shorter than their approach to the convergence zone. Reality stabilized around them as they moved away from the dimensional boundary, stars resuming their proper positions, physics behaving according to expected parameters. The protective field of the Imperial Omnitrix remained active, though its intensity had diminished now that the immediate crisis had passed. Aboard the Unity, they found the command center transformed into an impromptu celebration. News of the diplomatic breakthrough had spread through the coalition fleet, replacing the grim determination of impending battle with cautious optimism. You actually negotiated with dimensional parasites, Attea remarked as they stepped onto the command deck, her tone somewhere between incredulity and admiration. And they agreed. Unbelievable. More believable and you recommending Looma for a combat mission, Ben countered with a smile. Temporary tactical alliance, Attea dismissed, though without her former hostility. Like acknowledging that apoplexians make good shock troops despite being walking anger management failures. Looma approached them, Her formal military posture relaxed slightly in the aftermath of averted conflict. The Tetraman High C. Amund has acknowledged the treaty proposal. They express cautious approval of the diplomatic resolution. High praise from a warrior culture, Xylene observed. We Tetramans understand that the greatest victory is one that doesn't require battle, Looma corrected her. Though we remain prepared should diplomatic efforts fail. Rook Shar joined them, carefully maintaining professional composure. Despite the celebratory atmosphere around them. The stabilization network has been reconfigured as requested. All 37 beacons are now supporting the prototype gateway's harmonic frequency. And morphoid conversion activities have ceased throughout monitored space, Eunice added, approaching with her skin still shimmering with the green circuitry patterns of her technological interface. Existing nodes are dissolving without our intervention. Ben felt a profound sense of completion as he looked at the 5 women gathered around him. Each had played an essential role not just in averting catastrophe but in establishing something unprecedented, a framework for peaceful interaction between fundamentally different realities. The Imperial Omnitrix pulsed softly, projecting a subtle hologram visible only to him, a representation of dimensional frequencies gradually aligning into a stable pattern. The message was clear. What they had begun here would continue to develop, evolving into something beyond what any single species or dimension could have created alone. The Coalition Leadership Council is requesting your presence, Rook Shar informed Ben, her precise diction carrying a hint of pride. They wish to formally acknowledge your role in resolving the crisis. Our role, Ben corrected her. This was never a single-handed achievement. Indeed not, Xylene agreed. Though, your unique perspective was the catalyst that transformed conflict into cooperation. A quality worth recognizing, Looma added with unexpected warmth. The Tetraman concept of Corval, the war, Rear who prevents war, is our highest honor. The Inkerscenes don't have fancy philosophical terms for it, Attea remarked with her characteristic directness. We just call it being effective. Which you were, surprisingly enough. High praise indeed, Ben noted with a smile, recognizing the genuine respect beneath her flippant delivery. Eunice's expression grew thoughtful. The question now becomes, what happens after the immediate crisis? The coalition formed out of necessity, but its potential extends far beyond the morphoid threat. A perceptive observation, Xylene acknowledged. Alliances born of crisis often dissolve once the unifying threat recedes. Maintaining such cooperation requires deliberate effort and shared vision. The Imperial Omnitrix pulsed again, this time projecting a more complex hologram visible to all of them, a network of connections linking worlds throughout the galaxy, with the coalition nexus at its center. The implication was clear. What they had built could become the foundation for something much greater. The morphoids aren't the only threat our universe will face, Ben said, studying the projection. And dimensional diplomacy is just the beginning of what we might accomplish together. A permanent coalition, Looma considered the concept. The Tetraman High Command would require significant convincing to commit resources beyond the current crisis. As would the Inkerscene Empire. Attea added, though the technological benefits we've already gained from cooperation provide compelling arguments. The Plumbers would support continued alliance, Rook Shar offered. Interspecies cooperation aligns with our fundamental mission. And I believe Azimuth would approve, Eunice suggested. Despite his reluctance to directly involve himself in galactic politics, he has always advocated for knowledge exchange across civilizations. Xylene's expression was contemplative. The Uxorites have remained isolated for millennia, observing rather than participating. Perhaps it is time we reconsidered that approach. As they discussed the possibilities, Ben felt the weight of the Imperial Omnitrix on his wrist, not as a burden but as a responsibility and opportunity. The device had chosen him not merely to wield its power but to implement its vision. A universe where diversity was strength, where different perspectives combined to create solutions no single approach could achieve. Before we meet with the coalition leadership, he said, addressing the 5 women directly, there's something we should discuss. Something personal. A moment of silence fell over the group, each woman seemingly aware of what he meant. The unspoken connections that had formed between them during the crisis, connections that transcended professional collaboration, honor or even friendship, could no longer remain unacknowledged. The increased proximity necessitated by crisis response often catalyzes interpersonal bonds that might otherwise develop more gradually, Xylene observed. Her formal phrasing barely concealing deeper emotion. You mean we've all gotten closer than any of us expected, Attea translated bluntly. Might as well put it on the table, Tennyson. We're all thinking it. Cultural expectations regarding such matters vary significantly, Rook Shar noted carefully. The Ravana tradition would suggest formal courtship protocols conducted sequentially, not simultaneously. Eunice suggested when Rook Shar hesitated. Multi-partner relationship structures exist in approximately 63% of galactic civilizations, though with considerable variation in implementation. The Tetraman recognized the concept of battle bonding, Looma added, her formal tone softening slightly. Warriors who face death together often develop connections that transcend conventional relationships. Ben appreciated their willingness to address the situation directly, though the complexity was obvious. The 5 of you are the most extraordinary individuals I've ever known. During this crisis, I've come to care for each of you in ways I hadn't anticipated, ways that differ with each of you, but are equally meaningful. The question becomes whether such feelings are sustainable beyond crisis conditions, Xylene noted pragmatically. Many temporary alignments dissolve when external pressure recedes. I don't believe that's the case here, Ben responded. What's developed between us isn't merely a response to danger. It's a recognition of compatibility, of how our different perspectives and abilities complement each other. Compatibility is one consideration, Eunice observed. Practical implementation is another. 5 different species with different biological needs, cultural expectations, and political responsibilities present significant logistical challenges. Challenges the coalition has already proven capable of addressing in other contexts, Ben pointed out. Our entire alliance is built on accommodating different needs and perspectives within a unified framework. Attea crossed her arms, studying Ben with uncharacteristic thoughtfulness. So you're proposing we apply the coalition model to personal relationships? Bold move, Tennyson. I'm not proposing anything specific yet, Ben clarified. I'm acknowledging what already exists and suggesting we consider possibilities rather than dismiss them based on conventional assumptions. A reasonable approach, Xylene agreed. Though each of our cultures would view such an arrangement differently. The Uxorites, for instance, practice temporary partnership format. Ions based on intellectual and philosophical alignment rather than permanent bonding. Tetraman tradition values exclusivity in theory, Looma noted, but makes practical exceptions for royalty and high-ranking warriors whose responsibilities may require multiple alliance bonds. Ravana customs are more restrictive, Rook Shar admitted. Though I have already diverged significantly from Trady Cheon by joining the Plumbers and participating in galactic affairs. And the Omnitrix has no cultural precedent at all, Eunice added with a small smile. My existence is unique, which grants certain freedoms in determining my own path. Incursines are pragmatists, Attea stated with characteristic directness. Political alliances, personal relationships, they're all about mutual benefit and strategic advantage. The details are negotiable. Ben found himself struck by their thoughtful responses, by how each approached the situation through the lens of their unique background yet remained open to possibilities beyond conventional boundaries. It reinforced what he had come to believe, that their differences were not obstacles but strengths. Whatever form our relationships take, he said carefully, they should honor both what we share and what makes each of us distinct. Just as the coalition functions through mutual respect and recognition of different needs. A diplomatic answer worthy of your new role, Xylene observed with a hint of amusement. Though I suspect implementation will require more specific discussion. Much more specific, Attea agreed with a smirk. Starting with whose quarters you'll be occupying tonight, Ambassador Tennyson. Attea, Looma admonished, though without real censure. There are protocols to establish before such arrangements are formalized. The concept of sequential rotation does have practical merit, Rook Shar suggested, her expression serious despite the intimate nature of the discussion. Ensuring equitable distribution of time and attention. While addressing individual needs and preferences, Eunice added thoughtfully. Some may desire more intellectual engagement, others more emotional or physical connection. All consideratio NS that demonstrate the complexity of what we're contemplating, Ben acknowledged. and why it deserves careful thought rather than hasty decisions. The Imperial Omnitrix pulsed gently, as if offering its own perspective on the matter. The device that had brought them together, that had catalyzed this unprecedented convergence of individuals from different worlds, seemed to approve of the connections that had formed. The coalition leadership is waiting, Xylene reminded them gently. Perhaps we should continue this discussion after official matters are concluded. Agreed, Ben nodded. I wanted to ensure we acknowledged what exists between us before we step into the next phase of the coalition's development. As they prepared to meet with the assembled leadership council, Ben felt a profound sense of possibility. The crisis that had threatened to destroy their dimension had instead created something new, not just a diplomatic breakthrough with the Morphoids, but connections between individuals that crossed boundaries of species, culture, and tradition. The Imperial Omnitrix had chosen him for reasons that were still unfolding, bringing him into the orbit of 5 extraordinary women who now shared not just his mission but potentially his future. Whatever form that future took, he knew with certainty that it would be defined by the same principles that had guided them. The crisis, respect for difference, recognition of mutual strength, and the courage to imagine possibilities beyond conventional boundaries. 3 months later, the Galactic Coalition headquarters orbited a neutral star at the center of settled space. The massive station, constructed using technology contributed by 24 civilizations, served as both diplomatic center and research hub for the new interspecies alliance. At its heart, the Dimensional Embassy housed the first permanent gateway between the Coalition's universe and the Morphoid dimension, a stable interface where representatives from fundamentally different realities could exchange knowledge and resources under carefully maintained conditions. Ben stood on the observation platform overlooking the gateway chamber, watching delegations from both dimensions engage in what appeared to be a mathematical discussion rendered in holographic formulae that shifted between different dimensional representations. The Imperial Omnitrix on his wrist pulsed occasionally, translating concepts that transcended conventional language. The exchange program has exceeded initial projections, Xylene noted as she joined him, her form Magistrata robes indicating she had come from a council session. 17 civilizations have contributed research teams to the Dimensional Mechanics Study Group, including the Uxorites, Ben observed. A significant shift in your people's traditional isolationism. A small smile touched Xylene's features. Some traditions merit reconsideration when presented with unprecedented opportunities. My people have observed for millennia. Perhaps it is time we participated more directly. The subtle warmth in her voice when she spoke to him had deepened over the months since the crisis. Their relationship had evolved into something that combined intellectual partnership with moments of surprising tenderness, a connection that honored her species' philosophical approach to bonding while dating the emotional depth Ben brought to their interactions. The Tetraman delegation has approved expansion of the Joint Defense Initiative, came Looma's voice as she approached from the opposite direction. Unlike Xylene's diplomatic attire, Looma wore the practical armor of her position as Coalition Defense Coordinator, though modified to include insignia representing all member species. Their support is crucial, Ben acknowledged. The initiative needed their engineering expertise for the gravity well projectors. They required minimal convincing once I presented the strategic advantages, Looma replied with quiet pride. Even the traditionalist factions now recognize the benefits of integrated defense systems. Her relationship with Ben had developed along different lines than Lena's, built on mutual respect for each other's strength and capabilities, with formal Tetraman courtship rituals adapted to accommodate their unique circumstances. The structure appealed to Looma's cultural background while allowing for the flexibility their positions required. The conversation paused as Attea's voice carried across the chamber, where she was engaged in what appeared to be a spirited negotiation with representatives from 3 different systems. The Incursine Empire is offering technical support, not political oversight, she was explaining, her diplomatic skills having evolved considerably while retaining her characteristic directness. You maintain sovereignty. We provide jump drive technology and training. Simple transaction, mutual benefit. She's become surprisingly effective as trade commissioner. Xylene observed. Many expected the Incursine representative to focus exclusively on military matters. Attea has always understood power in all its forms, Ben noted with appreciation. she's just learned to exercise it more constructively. Their relationship had taken yet another form, intense and occasionally combative, with the verbal sparring both had AYS enjoyed now balanced by deeper mutual understanding and genuine affection. Attea approached their connection with the same pragmatic adaptability she brought to her political role, finding unexpected satisfaction in an arrangement that honored her independent nature. The observation platform's entrance slid open to admit Rook Shar and Eunice, both carrying data tablets filled with research findings from their respective departments. As Coalition Intelligence Director and Technological Integration Specialist, they worked closely together despite their vastly different backgrounds. The Dimensional Frequency Monitoring Network is online, Rook Shar reported, her precise diction conveying professional satisfaction. All 37 beacons transmitting data at optimal efficiency. He pattern recognition algorithms are identifying potential instability points with 94% accuracy, Eunice added, the circuitry beneath her skin glowing softly as she interfaced with the station's systems. We can now predict dimensional thin spots weeks before they manifest. Ben's relationships with Rook Shar and Eunice had developed along yet different paths, with Rook Shar, a EFUL balance of her traditional Ravana values with her progressive career aspirations, with Eunice, an exploration of what connection meant for someone who existed between biological and technological definitions of life. Each relationship honored their individual nature while finding common ground in shared purpose and genuine affection. The Coalition Council has approved Phase 2 of the Gateway Program, Xylene informed the group. 7 additional interface points to be established at key locations throughout Coalition space. With corresponding defensive measures, Looma added. Trust in dimensional diplomacy doesn't preclude tactical preparedness. The trade implications are significant, Attea noted, joining them after concluding her negotiation. Properly regulated exchange of transdimensional resources could revolutionize several industries. While maintaining strict protocols to prevent unintended consequences, Rook Shar emphasized. The monitoring framework must expand disproportionally with the Gateway Network, which the new quantum entanglement system will facilitate, Eunice completed, allowing real-time coordination across all interface points regardless of physical distance. Ben observed their interaction with quiet satisfaction. What had begun as crisis-forced cooperation had evolved into something far more integrated, a team whose different perspectives strengthened rather than divided them. Whose individual specialties combined to create something greater than any could achieve alone. The Imperial Omnitrix pulsed softly on his wrist, resonating with the dimensional gateway below. The device that had chosen him, that had brought these extraordinary individuals into his life, continued to evolve along with the coalition it had helped create. Ambassador Tennyson, a staff member, approached respectfully. The hybrid counselor has arrived for the scheduled diplomatic session. Thank you, Ben acknowledged. Please inform them I'll be there momentarily. As the staff member departed, Ben turned to the 5 women who had become the center of his once ordinary life. Duty calls, as usual. The burdens of leadership, Xylene observed with gentle understanding. Though I believe our scheduled discussion of dimensional ethics theory remains on the calendar for this evening. Followed by tactical assessment of the Koro's defense grid, Looma added. Which should conclude with sufficient time for our traditional sparring session. And don't forget you promised to review my proposal for interscene trade route expansion, Attea reminded him. Preferably over dinner at that new zero-gravity restaurant on level 7. I've also completed the modifications to your personal quarters environmental systems, Eunice noted. The atmosphere calibration now accommodates all 5 of our physiological requirements simultaneously. And I've updated the security protocols accordingly, Rook Shar completed. Including the privacy measures we discussed during our last cultural exchange evening. Ben couldn't help but smile at their seamless integration of professional and personal matters, a reflection of how their unprecedented relatio N-ship model had developed to honor both their individual needs and their shared connections. I'll see you all later, then, he confirmed. According to our perfectly balanced and meticulously negotiated schedule. Their expressions ranged from Attea's knowing smirk to Xylene's subtle smile to Looma's formal nod of acknowledgement, each responding in her characteristic way to what had become a private joke among them. The complex logistical framework they had developed to maintain their unique relationship configuration. As Ben departed for his diplomatic meeting, the Imperial Omnitrix pulsed once more against his wrist. The device that had catalyzed this extraordinary convergence of lives continued to evolve, its purpose still unfolding through the connections it had helped create, Connectio. NS that spanned not just different species but different approaches to love, power, and purpose. The Morphoid crisis had been averted not through destruction but through unprecedented cooperation. The Dimensional Treaty had established a new model for interaction between fundamentally different realities. And at the center of these historic developments, a once ordinary human found himself bound to 5 extraordinary women by connections as unique as they were profound. In the space between dimensions, in the convergence point where different realities met, they had discovered something that transcended conventional boundaries, a new way of being together that honored both their differences and their common purpose. Not despite the challenges of their diverse backgrounds, but because of them. The Imperial Omnitrix had chosen wisely indeed. ___. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.